Hey guys, welcome to part 9 of What If Naruto Became a One-Man Team. If you enjoy the video then like, share and subscribe and also comment your thoughts as it inspires me to make more such videos, and remember to check out my playlist section for other interesting stories. So let's get started. Chapter 28. Lessons Learned. The council chambers were filled once more with all of those who were able to make the attendance. Indeed, the only empty seats were those which once belonged to the Haruno and the honorary seat that used to be Danzo's. The event had brought every civilian council member as well as all of the clan heads to the table. Standing off to one side were others of high standing in the village, including Hatake Kakashi, Morino Ibiki and Sarutobi Asuma, who had wheeled one guest of honor for his temporary relief from the hospital for this occasion. Yes, in his rightful place sat Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, and he couldn't be more displeased. He had finally caught up to the happenings in the village since his injuries, and he was far from happy with what he had discovered. He sat, glaring at the civilians, and despite the contraptions that he still had connected to himself, they were all shrinking back in their seats. So, the Haruno and the Uchiha decided it would be a good idea to steal Uzumaki Naruto's belongings, and to top that off, the villagers tried to take advantage of the open gate like it was a yard sale with a free sign over the house. Please, tell me if I've missed anything. Hokage-sama. They were merely doing what they believed to be best in order to help the Uchiha get stronger, and the populace was simply trying to. Junzo tried to reason with the old man. They were trying to take things that they had no rights to whatsoever. Indeed, there is no one in this village who deserves those items more than Naruto for all the shit you people put them through. He tried to pound his fist on the table, but due to his weakness it ended up as a simple tap. But nothing was stolen in the end from his house, and yet he killed so many, civilians and shinobi alike, when he could have easily just escorted them off of his property. The warehouse owner countered. Yes, he could have, but because he is a property owner now, he has the right to deal with trespassers as he sees fit. Since those that went in had the intent to steal his possessions, not just the things that Minato left behind but items that he bought after he became the rightful owner of the estate, he had every right to do what he did. He currently has others living with him as well, and their items were also being boxed up, according to the reports I was given. Do you have an excuse for those as well? Denbi made to open his mouth, but Hiruzen stopped his train of thought instantly. If I hear one word about their association to the boy being a good enough reason to rob them, I will see to it that the owner of that voice is banned from all future council meetings. Why, you can't do that? The aged Hokage glared at the man. I am Hokage. This is my village. You will not tell me what to do. Hi. Hokage-sama. The pudgy man sunk a bit deeper into his seat from the killing intent that was coming his way. Not just from Hiruzen but Tsunade and Jiraiya as well, whom at the moment were flanking their sensei. I am pleased, however, that the instigators of this raid on Uzumaki Naruto's estate were properly handled. He nodded his thanks to the ninja side of the council as well as Ibiki, whom he continued to address. I trust they are getting their just punishments. Hi. Hokage-sama. They have been treated with the best care we had to offer. Ironically, it was Uzumaki-san's own methods that broke them in the first place. He took a glance at the table in front of him and debated for a moment. I do have slight concerns about the actions of one of my interrogators, whom saw himself as unfit to continue the interrogation of Haruno Isako due to supposed personal reasons of which he was not forthcoming. Deciding that now was not the time to discuss such topics, Inoichi intercepted the coming question. Hokage-sama, I will discuss the reasoning behind my actions in regards to Haruno Isako at a later time of your choosing. I promise you that my reasons were just and you will most likely agree with them. To his relief, and some people's discontent, the old man nodded in acceptance. I will speak with you after this meeting then, Inoichi. For now let's move on to Haruno Sakura. The girl, along with the Uchiha whom we will get to momentarily, assisted in the attempted murder of Uzumaki Naruto after he saved the village from a released Baiju. Despite the grievous reasons behind the report, Hiruzen couldn't help but be immensely proud of the boy for such a heroic act, and even more angered at how he was treated after the invasion despite that fact. According to reports, sir, she didn't actually try to kill the boy, she simply took a sword out of him and attempted to defend Uchiha-san. Uchiha-san. Kaharu attempted a weak defense, trying to claim innocence for at least one person they were trying to defend. That may have been true had her follow-up actions not pointed to other reasons. Kicking him to see if he would react, then stealing his current possessions and giving them to the Uchiha before finally breaking into his estate with a stolen key in order to rob him blind after he defended this village and myself. I will be the first to admit that without his aid I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. Sandaime-sama, there is no need to go that far. Tokiko waved off his comment, but was taken aback by his glare. This isn't a joke, damn it. Naruto made it possible for help to get in with me behind that barrier. His clones interrupted a forbidden jutsu that would have done who knows what if Orochimaru would have been allowed to complete it. As it was, the Anbu and I had to fight against Orochimaru and two resurrected Hokage. Finally, Naruto's clones distracted my former student enough so that I was able to get one last jutsu off and burn his arms to the point that he won't be doing jutsu for a while. Tsunade, who had been somewhat impressed by her sensei's respect for the brat, confirmed his analysis of Orochimaru's condition. When the traitor showed up just before this pervert and the Gaki came to get me, I could see that both of his arms were indeed nearly irreparable. It would be a miracle if he's able to form a single hand sign. Make no mistake, he knows other methods to rectify the problem with his arms. We are getting off topic. Where were we? Ah yes, Sakura. Ibiki. Report. Hiruzen clarified, making even Tsunade take a step back in shock as she had determined the limbs to be completely useless without the aid of someone of her caliber to heal them. Upon initial examination, the girl appeared to be headstrong, but she shattered in no time at all, especially after watching her mother's treatment. Due to certain admissions from her mother, we believe she may have broken a bit too well. She has answered any and all questions asked of her without hesitation in a subservient manner. She still has her free will, don't get me wrong, but I believe her to be in a state of perpetual shock and I don't see an end to it anytime soon. I see. Inoichi and Tsunade, you will work together to try to make her at least semi-competent again. Even if she can't continue her career, she shouldn't be so badly damaged that she can't at least live a civilian life. Hi Hokage-sama. Hi Sensei. So, who would like to tell me about our guest of honor? Hiruzen asked, confusing some into thinking he was talking about those that weren't normally present. Ibiki was not one of those few. Hey, Anko seems to like her new toys. He is her guinea pig for testing Naruto's methods. I am pleased to say that some of his methods far surpass our own at their stages in the process. This surprised many in the room. A mere preteen knowing better torture techniques that the head interrogator was more than enough for them to get a little nervous, those who had done wrong to the boy in the past more so than the rest. Where, pray tell, did he get access to such things? Sume inquired, not entirely certain she wanted to know. He didn't come right out and say it. But he did take quite the glance at the village when he implied how he learned them. Shivers went down a few spines while the elder Sarutobi hung his head slightly. Please, continue with your report, Ibiki. Hi, Hokage-sama. The Uchiha seems more mentally unstable than the last time we saw him. This could be due in part to the cursed seal that he acquired from Orochimaru. Gasps surrounded the chamber at the new information gained from those who hadn't known. Of course, he left us with reason to believe that such a thing could be false, and that his previous mental assessments could have been influenced. He glanced meaningfully at the two advisors who managed to look indifferent to the matter. Does anyone have anything to add before we move on to decide their punishments in full? Inoichi once again spoke up. Hokage-sama, I will need to discuss accusations against Isako with you, privately, before we take action against her. I believe your final decision for her could be dire. Hiruzen threw the man a calculating gaze, but he wouldn't dare question him on the matter. His trust in Inoichi far surpassed his trust in almost anyone else due simply to the man's unbiased standing in almost all matters. Very well. We will talk after the meeting, privately. His gaze switched to the rest of the gathering, letting them know that there would be no argument over the choice. Now, for the young Haruno, she will go through a psychiatric evaluation. After we determine her mental state, we will try to rehabilitate her. Once she is deemed stable once more, we will look into whether we want her to continue on as a shinobi or retire her to civilian duties. Any questions? Where will she stay during this time? Choza asked. She is in a perfectly fine jail cell right now. I see no reason to move her. Despite her possible mental state, she did take actions to harm, and steal from, a fellow Konoha ninja. For that she will serve her prison time of 2 years regardless of how long it takes her to recover from any shock she's experienced. What is the other option? Junzo asked, honestly expecting an answer. Other option? Well, we need another option if we're to take a vote, won't we? His jovial laugh was cut off by a somewhat irate leader of the village. There will be no other options at all today. I have clearly let this council forget itself over the years, and as such you have all tried to wrestle far more control than you rightfully have. Need I remind you, Shiratori, of our earlier conversations on civilian involvement in ninja matters? The decisions today will be made by me as I determine what is right for the good of the village. The only people in this room that are allowed to question my punishments are those ninja that are the heads of their clans or the two at my right and left. Do I make myself clear? The only reason you all are here right now is because there were civilians involved in these issues that may need to be contacted later. I assume you took names during these infractions of those who were involved. The civilians looked between each other nervously, making the Hokage sigh in frustration. Tsunade put a calming hand on his shoulder to warn him not to go overboard. We didn't see it as necessary, Hokage-sama. We figured that the boy had punished them enough. Thankfully someone else decided to enlighten the woman as to why that was not the case. He punished them in accordance to breaking into his home in a way that he saw fit in order to remove them from his estate without unnecessary damages. The actual punishment for breaking and entering, as well as attempted theft, is still the jurisdiction of this council. It seems, though, that due to the incompetence of those who were supposed to be fulfilling their duties, the names of those involved were not recorded, and now we have let a bunch of criminals loose in our village. Shikaku glared at the civilians, specifically Homura and Kaharu. You consider them criminals for trying to liberate the Yondaime's possessions from the Denbi was stopped as killing intent filled the room. He watched as each of the ninja drew a kunai, even Shibi. The man was sweating profusely as he audibly gulped. Go ahead, just give us a reason. Tsume growled. Enough, we're wasting time talking about useless topics. Rest assured, I will determine a suitable punishment for this lapse of duty. Now, since Haruno Sakura's punishment is decided and Isako's will be determined after my talk with Inoichi, we will move on to the Uchiha. This is my decree and it will be followed. Uchiha Sasuke will be forced to give up his genes when we find a suitable, willing, recipient for them. There will be no intercourse, he doesn't deserve it for all that he's done. He himself will remain in a high security cell unless an extraction is needed, and even at that time he will guard it. His eyes will be covered so as to not allow any possible attacks from them, and he will be bound, hand and foot, at all times. Hokage-sama. You are treating him like an enemy assassin. Surely he should at least get the same chance that was given to the younger Haruno. Kaharu pleaded. She was, after all, one of his guardians. I think not. That boy has gotten more than he ever deserved, and he still saw fit to steal from others of his own village just because he wanted to get power without doing any work, even going so far as to steal Kakashi's personal assassination jutsu. He didn't want anyone stronger than him around, and as such he tried to kill Uzumaki Naruto, even though said boy was in a weakened and distracted state. Correct, Inoichi. Hi Hokage-sama. Uchiha-san has done nothing but try to steal or harm the boy nearly every time they've come in contact since they graduated from the academy. But what if he decides to defect to another village because of this? Homura shot back. I would find it rather difficult if he managed to get out of our prison, but if he were to defect he would be labeled as a missing nin with a capture or kill order. But Sandaime-sama, what about the Sharingan? What about it? That damn eye has caused more grief than any other group of people that have come through our gates. Though I admit this civilian council, and the Hyuga clan as of recently, are becoming a very close second. A fact I intend to discuss with you later, Hiashi. He could see the man wasn't happy, but nor did he care at the moment. Many people have been overstepping their bounds lately, and this will be rectified, immediately. Now, unless there is anything else we have to say about the Uchiha, that is not in his defense, we will move to our next topic of discussion. The civilians. The usually argumentative side of the council perked up at the hint that it was now their turn to be officially included in the discussions. Kaharu once again became the spokesperson for the group as she stood and addressed the gathering. We have grievances from various civilians who are looking for damages from Uzumaki Naruto due to what they feel was an unjust amount of pain and suffering to their person in comparison to the actions they took. You're correct, it was unjust. He watched some of them smile as he himself let out a smirk. I'll make sure to send them a notice of what they are to pay Naruto for trespassing onto his property as soon as you give me their names. He couldn't help it, he had to chuckle at their spluttering. Civilians breaking into a ninja's house, as I believe you've been told before, is a breach of security and could be treated as such. Those bigots and narrow-minded fools have compromised the position of one of my best ninja, and if they continue to do so, I can promise you they will pay dearly, more so than those few who have already lost their lives. Sandaime-sama, surely you can't be serious. They weren't even successful any yet you want to punish them. Fumihiko complained. Would you rather I allow people to walk about anyone's residence freely and rearrange their belongings? Because that is exactly what happened according to what I've been told, and that's putting it lightly. I do not know how my successor will handle things, but I for one will not stand for such blatant disregard for security. If people want to play these types of games, fine, but they better be prepared to face the consequences. I expect a list of the names of the people who are seeking damages to be in my hands later today. Failure to do so will result in their punishment being put on the civilian council members here today. This of course started up the arguments once again as to why they should have to pay anything to Naruto, when he's the one who hurt others in the end. The shouts didn't last long though, as the combined killing intent-backed glares of the Hokage, Sannin and some clan heads managed to quiet them down very quickly, though afterward Tsunade had to heal Hiruzen a bit as the stress began to make his injuries ache. That action was not lost on anyone present. Sandaime-sama, with your current injuries and rather obvious degrading health, I believe it would be in our best interest as a village to name your successor. Hiashi announced in a none too friendly tone. Though his words may have seemed harsh, others couldn't help but nod in agreement. They would need to keep a strong front unless they wanted more enemies knocking at their gates, and a one-armed leader who nearly fell to his rogue student would not have that affect. I agree, and that is another reason that this council has been called together. I am officially announcing my retirement in 1 week. Despite their need for a strong leader, many of the ninja present hung their heads in sadness for the loss of their oldest leader. I wish to name my successor, but I believe she still needs a little more convincing. He saw Tsunade scowling out of the corner of his eye and grimaced a bit. If she accepts, then I will announce her as the Godime Hokage. If not, then I will choose my second or third preference. If we may, Hokage-sama, who are these people that you rate so highly as to consider them for the Hokage position? Homura was genuinely curious. He had an idea of who the top two were, but a third candidate eluded him. You have probably guessed, the top two candidates are those to my direct right and left, respectfully. The third, well, hopefully we won't have to come to that because I don't think he is completely ready, so I'll let you keep guessing on that one. He smiled a little, but stubbornly refused to give them any further information. The man he would have chosen if his first two fell through would indeed be powerful, but he also seemed too aloof for the job and would need to be a bit more serious if he were to accept. A bit more serious than the old man thought he could be. Tsunade on the other hand looked over her sensei to the second candidate. Could I really let that old pervert be Hokage? He'd probably alter the kunoichi dress code as soon as he was sworn in and put viewing booths in the hot springs. She shook her head and for once seriously considered her position in the matter. Coming back to Konoha hadn't been nearly as bad as she at first thought it would be. Sure, there were pangs of grief when she'd spotted places that she and Dan would go for dates or where Naoki would make her play ninja with him, but most of those had changed so much in recent years that they were hardly recognizable. Even the place where Dan had proposed to her was torn down due to its structural degradation. It truly had been a long time since she'd last been here. Hiruzen gave a small smile as he heard a resigned sigh from Tsunade. Now that those issues are taken care of, I believe I have been far too out of the picture for over a month. I would like reports on both the ninja and civilian status as well as the current state of repairs in the village. Koharu, how are the civilians faring after the invasion? And I warn you right now, I don't want to hear a word concerning Uzumaki Naruto, or I will have you escorted out of this chamber. The woman gulped a bit as she stood to give her report. She now had to find a way to cover her long list of issues without pointing them all at a certain blonde-haired brat. The meeting took a good portion of the day, but by the end everyone had a decent idea of what all had happened in the past month. There were surprises on both the civilian and ninja sides of the council as to what the other half had managed to accomplish. Amazingly, a topic about Naruto never had a chance to come up as they had far too many other important matters to deal with at the moment. One main topic that came up was the damage to the hospital during the invasion. With Tsunade's input, it was decided to add a small auditorium during the ongoing reconstruction. It would be to assist in the training of future medic nin. To her surprise, Hiruzen was all for the idea. When she asked him why the hell he hadn't agreed with it before, he informed her that at the time they were still in strain with the other countries and couldn't afford to spare the ninja she was requesting to train. She reluctantly conceded the point. Now that the moment was in the past, she had more than enough time to look back on the actions and knew that there was a reason the old man had denied her that desire, even if it took this long to finally find out why. Among the ninja-specific issues, there were mainly topic about balancing reconstruction and mission duties. He was happy to hear reports of all of their recent successes and not too concerned about their losses. Indeed, it seemed that nothing could darken his mood too much after finally getting out of that hospital bed and into some fresh air, even if he had to be stuck in a room with the council. At least his day didn't consist of staring at blank, white walls. Once their topics began to dwindle, the meeting was called for the day so that everyone could take a break, eat and tend to their other duties. It wouldn't do to have the clan heads stuck with him all day when they had duties of their own to see about. The only one that was held back was Inoichi, who sat in place and locked eyes with the Hokage to remind him that they still had a private matter to discuss. Leave us, Tsunade. If you have something to do, just send a nurse to come pick me up when I'm done here. I'll be fine until then. Giving her a small smile, he patted her hand reassuringly. She hesitated only slightly before nodding her head. If that's what you want, sensei. I have something to take care of quick. If you're not done by the time I am, then I'll get someone to come pick you up. Just try to stay calm. She shot a glare at the Yamanaka clan head in warning, and waited for him to acknowledge it before she left. As the door closed, Sarutobi turned back to the blonde man and narrowed his eyes. So, what did you find out that was for my ears only? Hokage-sama. I know who she is. Hiruzen waited for the man to continue, but when nothing came he turned inward to consider who she might be. It took a few minutes, but upon realization his eyes shot open. Who? Despite the man's sudden outburst and the wave of killing intent that flooded the room, Inoichi stayed mostly calm. Before I answer that, I ask that you let me give a request. He watched the older man give him a calculating gaze. It wasn't often that the Yamanaka gave the Hokage a request, but when it was usually something dead serious. He was given the allowance to continue, but it was only to voice his request, not the acceptance of it. Hokage-sama, I ask that Uzumaki Naruto be allowed to determine the punishment for her crime. I know we do not condone acts of revenge, but I believe in this case it could help him in more personal matters. If he can personally lay his demons to rest, I believe that he may be able to become somewhat more normal in respect to the better half. Seconds passed, then minutes until the Sandame's voice finally rang through the empty council chamber. Quote. He will be allowed to request punishments, but they must be approved and he is to have minimum involvement. I don't want him to have the chance to have his emotions become too involved. Depending on what is approved, I will see about what more punishment this woman should endure. Now, who is she? Haruno Isako. As soon as the name came out, Inoichi was on the floor gasping for breath as the air pressure in the room seemed to instantly multiply 10 times over. That whore. That slutty little tramp. I'll see her tortured until Shinigami-sama begs for mercy for this, and. Oh God. The weight holding the clan head down suddenly released and he looked with concern at his leader. We made him face her. Every council meeting he was forced to see her in. And they both acted like nothing happened. Tears threatened to drop from the old man's eyes as he thought of the pain that the boy, who was akin to a grandson to him, must have been going through at those times. He wanted to scream, to storm out of the room and beat the woman to a bloody pulp and fling her soul into the Shinigami's stomach himself, but Inoichi was right, that would do little good for Naruto. All he would get from it was the knowledge that his tormentor was dead. There was a reason the boy had stayed quiet about all of this, and it wasn't just so someone else could have the satisfaction of taking away his pain. Hokage-sama. I'm okay, Inoichi, thank you. I'd like to talk to Naruto soon, but not yet. I need some time to think this over. I need some time to figure out how to tell him that I'm sorry. Hi, Hokage-sama. Inoichi felt a little uncomfortable. He'd seen one of the strongest shinobi in the world go from a dominating force to a shriveled being full of self-remorse in seconds. It was a lot to deal with. Hokage-sama, I think if Naruto would have felt too uncomfortable being forced to see her, he would have mentioned it, at least to you. He adores you, and I find it hard to believe that he would want you to be like this for his sake. Besides, he's happier now than at any other point in his life. That has to amount to something. Hiruzen sucked in a shaky breath and nodded to himself. You're right. I shouldn't be pitying him like this. He's grown strong even without the care of anyone else, and with the whole world against him he's done so much good. I think I'm ready to go now. If you don't mind, Hokage-sama, I'll take you back to the hospital. Inoichi walked over and after a nod of acceptance, shunshined them out of the room. Tsunade entered the office that her two most beloved people had wished to call their own. Slowly she traced her hand over the top of the desk before settling into the chair behind it. Could she really accept such a position? What would they think of her if she did? What would they think of her if she didn't? She spun the chair around so that she was looking out over the expanse of the village and couldn't help but wonder again at how different it looked. The Kyuubi must have destroyed so much for all these changes, and the Oto-Tsuna invasion only added to the distortion of her memories. The soft sound of the door closing brought her out of her musings as she turned to face the visitor. Oh, Tsunade-sama, I didn't expect anyone to be here. Shizune, what are you doing here? She had barely seen her apprentice since they'd arrived. I decided to help out at the hospital while we're here, so I've been bringing the doctor's reports here. She dropped the stack of papers she held into a box in the corner of the room. I didn't feel like just sitting around and doing nothing after all. The Sannin allowed herself a smile. You always were the one to jump into your work right away. I seriously wonder if I'd even be able to order you to take a vacation. With all due respect, Tsunade-sama, running around with you gives me all the reason I need to stay in one spot as long as possible. The older woman flinched, and looked a little ashamed. I suppose I have been forcing you to run around a lot. She sighed loudly and rubbed her temples. I just wish I had all the answers sometimes, you know. Maeda Guy recently asked me if I could take a look at his student. The boy has the worst fractures I've ever seen in his arm and leg. He shouldn't even be moving around and yet he ignores the doctor's orders and tries to train. He's more passionate about being a shinobi than anyone I've ever met. A person like that should be completely mentally destroyed by having an injury that ended their career so soon, and yet he still isn't giving up, even after they told him there was no hope. Shizune giggled a bit. Hi, I've met Lee Kun. He's not exactly your average ninja, is he? It just makes me wonder. And then I look out at the village and I hardly even recognize it. It's like it all moved on without me and left me behind. She motioned towards the panorama behind her to show her point. I feel like I'm still living in the past, Shizune. I don't know what to do. Sarutobi-sensei wants me to be Hokage. I think he's allowing me to modify the hospital just to tempt me into staying. That's great, Tsunade-sama. The apprentice nearly jumped for joy at the prospect of staying in the village instead of continuing their travels. Quote. Is it? I don't know. Tsunade-sama. Think about it. Dan and Naoki may not have been able to see their dreams come true, but maybe you can live their dreams for them. I wonder. If you want to take your mind off things for a bit, Tsunade-sama, I'm sure everyone would be really happy if you'd stop by the hospital. Maybe even give a few pointers. Thank you, Shizune. Maybe some work is what I really need right now. Tsunade stood from the desk and took one last look out over the village. It's all just a memory now. I heard I was to report here for a mission. Oh. Hey Haku-chan. Kin-chan. Mutt, Hataki-san. He was immediately glomped by said females as he made his way to the mission's counter. Hi, Uzumaki-san. You are to team up with Team Kakashi on their mission while completing your own. Your mission is in this scroll and its parameters are classified, even amongst your teammates, that includes Kakashi, unless it is necessary to do so in order to complete the mission. The Chunin threw a look at the Jonin to make sure he understood, but let out a sigh when he saw that said Jonin was too engrossed in his book to voice anything but a small giggle. You may, however, explain your mission to them upon completion. Good luck. Understood. Naruto took his mission scroll and read over it. His face changed to surprise as his head shot up. This is classified, Uzumaki-san. The Chunin cut him off. Understood. Naruto bowed as he rolled up the scroll and sealed it in another before slipping it in his vest. Hataki-san, when you're ready. Kakashi looked up from his book as though hearing the surrounding world for the first time. Oh, right. Team, pack for a week-long mission and meet at the gate in 1 hour. We're heading out tonight to keep this as short as possible. 3 sounds of acceptance sang out through the room as the 2 genin and female Chunin rushed off, leaving Kakashi, Naruto and the Chunin in charge of mission for the day in the room. Not to sound disloyal, but Haku-chan is a Chunin as well and is already going on the mission with Hataki-san. Shouldn't she be taking this mission? Unsure how to answer, the Chunin looked to the Jonin for help. Naruto, the mission my team was assigned requires a full squad. Your mission must have you separating from us at some point if it requires an extra person, thus why we need you to come along. If you wish, you can have Haku do that mission and you can come with the rest of us, though that may become an issue since you've already seen that scroll. Naruto absent-mindedly put his hand over the scroll in his pocket and considered his options. No, I think I'll let Haku stay where she is. It'll keep her mind a bit more at ease in the end. Deciding he may need some specialized equipment for his mission, Naruto left for his house, leaving the 2 other men alone. You know he couldn't have handed over the mission, Kakashi. The Chunin said as he finished marking down the information for the team. I know, but I also know he wouldn't put unnecessary strain on those he cares about. The Chunin just nodded at him as he left to get his own belongings. Come on, Naruto-sama. We're going to be late. Kin shouted from the front door. Seconds later, Naruto came out of his office, stuffing some seals into a pouch at his waist. He had changed into a pair of black pants, similar to those he wore during the Chunin exams, and a tight, black, long-sleeved shirt. His Chunin vest was proudly displayed over top his clothes with his tanto resting just below it. Sorry about that, girls. I had a little trouble finding what I needed. I seemed so long since. Well, let's get going. He smiled at them as he opened the door to let them out. True, he no longer needed to since there was no key required, but he was a gentleman and he was being polite. Are you all right, Naruto-kun? Haku asked, a little worried at his slip. Fine, just a little anxious at this one. I'll be all right though, he assured her as they walked out of the estate and made their way to the village gate. By the time they got there, it only took Kakashi about 10 minutes to show up. Impressive, Kakashi-san. You're right on time. Well, I heard a voice a while back that made me start to think, and I like to think that I've taken a better path recently. Perhaps I could tell you where it was and it could give you some advice as well. Sorry, but I doubt that voice would have any bearing on my problems. He chuckled a little, remembering what exactly got Kakashi to change. Anyhow, I believe we have a mission to attend to, if you would like to lead the way. Naruto flourished a bow and signaled the Jonin ahead. Hey, fine. Kiba, take point. Haku and Kin take center guard. Naruto, you've got left and rear, I'll take right. The Jonin suddenly looked around as though something were missing. But not until our client gets here. Team 7 dropped their jaws at the man's lack of attention. How could he possibly have just now realized that they were missing someone? Well, I guess this is as good of a time as any. We'll be escorting a political figure named Funabashi to the Aim no Kuni border where he will be handed off to Aim Ninja. But sensei, Isn't AIM hostile? Hi, Kiba. That's why we're only going to the border. When we do the handoff to the AIM ninja, we'll be making sure they stay on their side before retreating home. Funabashi Dono is from beyond Tori no Kuni and his quickest way home is through AIM. Let's just hope this doesn't turn out to be like your last escort, Kakashi-san. Hi. I could deal without having missing Nin ambushing us on this one. Anyhow, once the scroll is signed by Funabashi Dono, we head home and it's mission complete. Since we won't be leaving the country, the mission is slated as a mid-C rank. He looked over to Naruto, who was absently patting his own scroll. How about you, Naruto? What rank did you manage to pull? Huh. Oh, sorry, but I can't say even that much. C. The two stared at each other for a minute before breaking eye contact, leaving three rather confused individuals. It took another 15 minutes before the robes of an obvious political figure came into view. His fine silks swayed around as he walked through the crowd on his way to the gate. Apologies, I was caught up in a discussion about your monument with a jewelry store owner and didn't see the time. Overall, their first impression of the man was that he was kind and considerate of others. He looked over the group and seemed pleased. I was under the impression that I would be getting a guard of 4, but it seems that it was decided that a spare should be added. Either you aren't as confident in your ninja's abilities as I'd been led to believe, or there is another purpose for the extra company, not that I'm one to complain. Funabashi Dono, Uzumaki-san has his own mission which just happens to follow our path for the most part. He'll be accompanying us as support until he has to split away from his own agenda. Kakashi informed the man. I see. Well, I'm not exactly up to the standards of a ninja, but I'm no slouch either, so let's be on our way. We only have a week to get to AIM, and though you 5 may be able to get there in no time at all, a politician like me may take all week. I hope you can put up with an old fool for that long. The politician laughed jovially as he began to walk forward, his escort quickly falling into position. The group walked and laughed as Funabashi cracked jokes, and before long the sun was setting and they were forced to make camp. They found a decent-sized clearing, far enough off the path to conceal any light from a fire, and began to set up their tents. Haku and Kin will be in the left tent while Naruto, Kiba and myself will take the right. Funabashi Dono will be in the middle so that he will be guarded at all times. Oh nonsense. I don't need a tent all to myself. You 3 boys will be far too crowded in one tent. I'll have plenty of room for one of them to sleep in, Hataki-san. As grateful as I'm sure they are for your offer, we are going to be taking guard shifts during the night, so only 2 will be in the tent at any given time. You can rest easy knowing that we'll all be comfortable and watched over at night, Funabashi Dono. Kakashi gave the man an eye smile as he finished with their cooking fire. Naruto, who had stopped upon hearing the discussion, came out from the trees with a couple dead rabbits in his hands. He handed them off to Haku, already skinned and gutted, for her to add to their meal tonight. Not 3 minutes later, Kiba came strolling out with 3 rabbits of his own which he began to gut and skin right in camp before being hit over the head by Kin. Ow. What the? Baka. Go do that in the woods. We don't want any uninvited guests to show up later because of the smell. Kiba looked from his kunai, which was about to dig into the creature, to those in the camp. The ninja seemed to simply be waiting for him to do as told, while Funabashi looked rather disgusted and seemed to have a bit of a green tint to his face. Fine. Not like whoever is on guard shouldn't be able to handle anything that gets close. He muttered as he got back up and headed into the woods a little ways. Honestly, you'd think he would at least have paid attention during survival training. Was he this bad in the academy too? Kin looked at Naruto for an answer. He shrugged in return. From what I saw when I was actually there and inside the classroom, he spent more time asleep or ogling the girls than paying attention. I'm rather surprised I was able to keep the position as dead last with him around. But then, I guess I had a bit of an advantage there. What do you mean, Naruto-sama? Naruto inwardly cursed himself while maintaining a calm appearance. I mean that I was actually trying to stay in last place, so as long as I did worse than him I was pretty much set. I wish I'd have paid more attention to Shikamaru though, he did almost as bad as I did because he slept through most of the tests. He breathed a sigh of relief as they seemed to accept his explanation. Over supper the girls marveled at the politician's jewelry. Most of it was simple gold links and bands, but there were a few pieces that stood out amongst the glimmer. One such piece was a ring on his smallest finger that held a large emerald as its centerpiece, which in turn was flanked by 2 rubies before the design disappeared in some ornate gold filigree. The girls were, of course, enthralled with the unique piece, while the most reaction it got from the boys was a raised eyebrow from Kakashi. Once finished, Naruto opted to take first watch while Kakashi would follow and Kiba would take the tail end of the night. The girls were left to sleep peacefully, so they would keep to Kakashi's word of having no more than 2 people per tent at any given time. The second night, the girls refused to not keep watch, so with a little arguing, and the admittance that they regularly slept in the same bed with Naruto, the 2 Chunin and lone female genin shared that night's watch. The only one that seemed to be largely disgruntled by the fact was the local flea market, sidekick not included. On the third night, just inside their borders, Naruto finally decided to part ways with them after he had eaten. Funabashi seemed to despair at the news as he claimed they had so much fun together. Indeed, their trip had plenty of good moments, but a ninja's duty called and he had a mission to complete. The girls gave him their hugs and kisses as he left, Kakashi following slightly behind, waving off his team's attempts to follow. Once they were well away from the others, the 2 stopped with Naruto slightly ahead of the Jonin. "Are you going to tell me your mission, Naruto?" "No, Hatake-san. My mission is still a secret. Just do me a favor and get the others away as quickly as possible after the exchange. I fear that the noise I make could cause you some problems if you stick around too long. If all goes well, I might make an effort to catch up and join you on your way back to Konoha," Naruto said over his shoulder. Quote, "Don't seek out danger, Naruto. Even if there aren't a lot of people that would miss you, such a thing would devastate those who would." Naruto leapt off the branch he was on and disappeared into the night, leaving his last words for Kakashi to shake his head at. "Like I would give all those bastards something to celebrate." The air was tense as the group of Konoha ninja faced the equally wary AIM ninja. The only ones who seemed to keep their cool were the 2 Jonin. An altercation at this point would not be beneficial for either country. "Funabashi Dono, if you'll just sign this scroll, we will release you into the care of your next escort." "Of course, Hatake-san." The man flourished a pen as he elegantly signed his name to the document. He smiled at the Konoha ninja before looking at the sky. "It looks like the weather is about to turn. I do believe I will regret not bringing the proper attire for traveling such a wet area. Oh well, I suppose that is what I get for having a country that wants me back fast enough that they are willing to go through this whole mess to get me there." The AIM ninja behind him scowled a little at the derogatory comment about their home, but this was their mission even if the client seemed to be rather rude. "Thank you, Funabashi Dono. Now my team and I have to head back to Konoha. We're on a rather tight schedule, so if you'll excuse us." "Oh, of course. Farewell, and I look forward to the next time I will require your services." As the 4 ninjas sped into the distance, the politician smiled at his new entourage. "Well, no reason to wait around. If you wouldn't mind leading the way, Ninja-san, I will do my best to keep pace." The team of ninja were well out of sight when they heard the commotion. Akamaru picked up the distant sound and barked his worry to Kiba. "Sensei, something just exploded behind us. Should we go check it out?" "Negative, Kiba. We're close to the border still, so a skirmish isn't unlikely. Without knowing any details, we aren't getting involved unless it spills over into our direction. Let me know if you hear anything getting closer though." "Hi, Sensei." They continued on until late evening at a much faster pace than they had traveled with their charge. They would easily make it back the next morning, but there was no reason to rush things, so Kakashi had them set up camp for the night. "How do you think Funabashi Dono is doing right now? I bet he's soaked to the bone." Kiba laughed and was joined by Akamaru, who barked along with him. "I kind of pity him, you know. He seemed so nice. I don't really think it would be proper to wish bad weather on him," Kin said, a little mellow due to the lack of her boyfriend and Funabashi's jokes. "Yeah, I know. I just think it's funny how he reacted to it. It seemed like just a mild annoyance, or something that he's used to. I wonder if they make him go through AIM often. He did seem rather light-hearted about the whole situation. A man without a care in the world. If only that were true for everyone." Haku chimed in between bites of her rice. Throughout their conversation, Kakashi kept looking back the path they came. He was brought out of his own musings as the others turned their attention to him. Sensei. Are you alright? Yeah, fine, just looking for our straggler. Naruto said he might catch up to us if he finishes quickly, so I thought I'd keep an eye out. Kakashi smiled at them to lay their worries to rest. So, Sensei, did he tell you what his mission was? No, Haku. I have my suspicions, but we'll have to wait until he gets back to find out. That is, if he feels like telling us. What do you mean if? It's Naruto, so of course he's going to want to rub it in our faces about how cool his own mission was. He'll probably play it up and exaggerate the whole thing. Like saying it was a solo raid on an AIM Jonin exam or taking out another A-rank missing ninner. Assassinating the same man you were escorting for 3 days. The four looked up immediately, shocked to hear the familiar yet distant voice. You really need to learn to keep your trap shut and your ears open, Kiba. Akamaru has been trying to warn you about me coming here for about 5 minutes, no doubt. Naruto jumped down to a clear spot near the fire. So I take it your mission was a success? Kakashi inquired. Hi. Not my favorite, but it's finished. Assassination never is easy, but at least you've completed your mission. How many casualties for them? Flashback. Naruto made his way in a wide arc around the meeting point for the escort detail. He was now in enemy territory and had to be extremely cautious so he wouldn't get caught. He found an adequate lookout point for the exchange and watched the politician get handed off. Just as he'd hoped, Kakashi didn't wait around and took his advice to leave quickly. He ducked back behind the tree and waited for the small dots on the horizon to disappear. Then he waited longer for the escort of AIM Ninja to pass beneath him. Then he waited more until they were just about to disappear amongst the trees before triggering his trap. In less than 5 seconds there was a loud explosion as light filtered through the trees. He rushed towards his target. He would have to act fast if he didn't want to be caught. He arrived at the scene of the explosion to see most of the AIM Nin laying on the ground. The only one left semi-conscious was leaning against a tree and would soon be sleeping just like his companions. Unfortunately for him, that was too long for Naruto, so the boy just rushed up behind him and knocked him out the hard way, foot to head. With all the witnesses taken care of, he made a few clones to rummage for what he could find as he advanced on their unsuspecting charge. He took a brief moment to remember exactly why he was doing this, but once the information hit him he continued without hesitation. A slice later and the man would bleed out his life's essence from the jagged cut under his chin. No amount of healing would save him now. Gathering his new possessions, Naruto leapt back up into the trees. He threw one last glance at the man to see the 2 large puddles spreading beneath him and the blue tint to his lips. Indeed, he would be dead in seconds if not sooner. He leapt off to hit his retreat trail before anyone else would have a chance to happen across the scene. The AIM escort detail would wake up in a half hour to find their possessions gone and their charge dead by a seemingly talentless assassin. Flashback and Kiba shot up from his seat and pointed at Naruto. Wait. You were telling the truth. You really killed Funabashi. What the hell, man? Why did we even escort him to AIM if you were just going to kill him? Naruto-kun. Did you really kill him? Naruto sighed and leaned back against a tree, helping himself to some of the leftovers of their meal. Yeah, he's dead, and to answer your question, Hatake, just the target. You left the AIM Nin alive. You better hope you weren't seen. Kakashi scolded. A combination of delayed flash bang seals followed by a very strong knockout gas planted on Funabashi himself. If they weren't blinded, then they weren't going to voluntarily open their eyes either. To be safe, I also covered myself with a cloak and hid my Hitai-ite. He turned to those of his generation in order to answer their questions next. Funabashi was a sick man, a murderer and a fiend. He was part of Gato's operation in illegal trade and we finally tracked him down recently. We were given the go-ahead for the assassination with the stipulation that it wouldn't be tracked back to us, thus the reason we couldn't just do away with him in Konoha. He was trading with Gato. What was he trading? Kiba asked, now slightly interested instead of angry after the mention of the tyrant who threw Nami into turmoil. Try to figure it out, Kiba. Why did he seem so interested in having one of us sleep in his tent with him? Of course you may not have seen it, but I'm sure everyone else did if they think back a bit. He smirked a bit at Kiba's confused look and the dawning realization on the faces of the others. How he stared at your ass every time you moved and licked his lips. Oh, how he wished he'd had a camera as he watched the Inuzuka's mouth drop open in disgusted shock. I think I'm gonna be sick. The poor boy rushed off into the bushes, and after a few seconds, the sounds of a half-digested meal could be heard hitting the ground. As soon as he came back, Naruto decided to add a little seasoning to Kiba's night. I don't see why you're so upset, Kiba. He was treating you nicer than you've treated a lot of women in the past. At least he didn't try to force himself on you. Kiba glared at the blonde, but didn't make any aggressive movement towards him, though a growl did escape his lips. While you may be right about that, at least I went after the opposite sex. Besides, after what I experienced because of your big mouth, I don't think I'll be able to look at another girl the same way again. So you're saying that maybe Funabashi's actions weren't that bad an option? Haku quirked her brow as she fought a smirk. Damn it. That's not what I meant, and you know it. I just won't be able to, force myself on one again without remembering the retraining that it's earned me in the past. Alright. Enough fun for the night. So, our mission was successful and Naruto was able to complete his without incident, so we're all in the clear. By the way, Naruto, what did you get as proof of his death? Kakashi asked. You mean besides his DNA on my clothes? He pointed to a bloody spot on his pant leg to emphasize his point. I got this. He smiled as he held up a piece of jewelry. More specifically, he held up a ring with a large emerald and 2 rubies. The girls gasped in recognition. That's Funabashi's ring. What are you going to do with it, Naruto-sama? Well, if they don't need it as proof, then I guess I'll just add it to the other pieces I took off him. I decided to add to the pile of suspects by including the possibility of bandits and missing Nin. Even without that, they would have a huge amount of trouble proving it was us as long as you didn't get careless. That was more like adding insult to injury. Kiba gave his rare, and possibly only, moment of praise to the blonde. I ran the border to a stream and made a clone. The clone went upstream while I came back here. They'll likely follow the dirty water up and lose the trail than risk crossing our borders. Beside, if her was practically drooling over you, imagine what his thoughts were of me. Naruto struck his most dashing pose as the others fell down laughing. Even Kiba managed to laugh despite the jab at his looks. That night passed quickly and the next morning came with 4 ninja ready to depart for their home. Because of their increased speed, they crossed the threshold of the gates by mid-morning to see 2 alert Chunin ready to greet them. After signing back in, they handed in their mission scrolls before leaving Kakashi and Naruto hanging back to fill out their reports, the former giving the latter some tips on what to and not to include. After handing in their scrolls, the Chunin on duty informed Naruto that the Hokage wanted to see him soon about an important personal matter, to which Naruto told him that he would do so after he had a quick change and some lunch. Naruto arrived at his estate, about a quarter of an hour after the girls, to find Neji and Hiashi standing outside his gate. He groaned as he walked towards them. Nothing good was going to come from this confrontation. Hyuga. To what do I owe the pleasure of such esteemed company? Know your place, boy. I will have a word with Hinata now and you will not get in my way. Of course not. Go right ahead. Naruto waved his arm towards the gate indicating that Hiashi head right through. Don't play games with me, child, open the gate and let me in. How about I go to the Hyuga estate and demand entrance to see Hanabi? How well would that go over with you? Absolutely not. You wouldn't make it past the front gate, if the guard allowed you to go that far. So what makes you think that demanding me to open my gate will get you anything but the same reaction? Boy, I am the Hyuga clan head and I hold a seat on the council of this village. By rights I can demand what I want from a peon like you. Now open this gate or I will be forced to take actions against you. Force all you want. You'll get nothing out of me, but I promise you that if you lay a single hand on me, or anyone under my protection, you will regret your decisions. Now get out of my way and leave Hinata alone. She has no desire to talk to you, and you lost the right to ask for such a thing when you banished her from your household and clan. Now leave. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the clan head as the man stayed standing at his gate. Fine. Naruto began to walk away. Where do you think you're going, boy? Naruto suddenly felt a hand applying pressure on his shoulder. He calmly looked behind him and into the glare of the Hyuga head. I don't think that is something that should concern you. Where I feel like going and when is entirely up to me. Unlike your clan, the rest of the people in this village are free to do as they see fit with their time. You would do well to remember that, Hyuga. I demand you let me see my daughter before you go anywhere, fiend. Fiend, huh? You treading awfully close to breaking some laws. Be careful you don't tip over the edge, and last I checked your daughter is tucked away safe in your estate right where you left her when you decided to come harass the innocent populace of Konoha. Perhaps you'd like to learn a little lesson though. What could you possibly have to teach me, you little wretch? Clang. Never underestimate the uses of Kage Bunshin. The Naruto that Hiashi had grabbed went up in smoke, obscuring the man's vision of the area. When it cleared, he saw an empty street. Gritting his teeth, he set off to find Neji and ask him why he ran off instead of guarding the gate like he should have. Granted, he didn't give him that specific order, but the slave should have known. The door to the house swung open and two figures walked inside. Naruto warned his companion of the rules of the house and the other teen begrudgingly accepted. They walked inside and Naruto looked around for their prey, only splitting up when Naruto went upstairs for a brief moment. The house seemed empty, so the two headed out to the backyard where any liveliness that had been going on immediately stopped. Neji Nisan. Hinata's stutter seemed to come back full force for a moment. What the hell, Naruto? Kin shouted in outrage as she and Haku turned to see what Hinata was so nervous about. Calm down, everyone. Naruto commanded as he and Neji stepped out into the yard. Girls, go inside. This is going to be a private matter, I'm sure. He watched as they refused to move from their position. Now, with a little more anger in his voice, they jumped up and reluctantly moved away, though choosing to work on a more distant part of the garden just so they would be within helping distance if needed. Sorry, Neji, but I think that is about as good as you're going to get right now. Neji took his gaze from Hinata in order to see where the other girls went. That will be adequate, Uzumaki-san. Now if you would please leave us, I would like to talk to Hinata alone. Naruto shook his head. Like I said, Neji, this is as good as you're going to get. In other words, I still don't trust you enough to leave you alone with Hinata, so anything you have to say you will have to say in front of me. Don't worry about anything getting back to your uncle though. I'm not one to squeal unless it's something that will put the village or my precious people at risk. Walking over to Hinata, he put a hand around her shoulder and signaled for them all to sit. Now, why are you here, Neji? Neji looked from Hinata to Naruto's hand on her shoulder, then to Naruto himself before settling back on Hinata. He stiffened for a moment as he prepared to do what he needed to do, causing the other two to stiffen as well just before their eyes widened in shock as Neji bowed to the ground in front of them. Hinata, though we no longer are of the same family, I wish to apologize to you for my former actions against your person. I was recently made aware of the fact that I was taking out my hatred for the main branch on someone who was in nearly as much pain as I was. Had I not been so focused on my own fate, I may have been able to see the distress of those around me and as such given you the aid you needed instead of throwing useless and senseless glares behind your back. Neji. Hinata held her hand out towards him as if to comfort him. Her kind heart reaching out despite all the boy had done to her. Please do not forgive me, Hinata. I have lived in nothing but hatred and spite, and such a thing is unforgivable. I nearly killed someone I was meant to protect, and for nothing but the satisfaction it would give me to see the pain in the clan head's eyes. A pain that I now fear I would never have seen regardless of the outcome. Naruto was smiling at the confession while beside him Hinata was in tears. Uzumaki-san, since I am no longer able to watch after my cousin, I charge you with her safety. If any harm befalls her, I will lay the blame on your head. Naruto just snickered. Like you really had to demand that. I'd protect her even if Kami told me not to. His arm around her tightened as she broke out in sobs and collapsed into his chest. Uzumaki-san, I would ask one other favor of you. Naruto turned his attention back to the Hyuga. I ask that you watch Hiashi if he ever decides to punish a cadet branch member in front of you. If you can learn the seals, it may help in more ways than you could imagine. Naruto nodded at his fellow shinobi as he watched him stand. Now if you would be so kind as to let me out, I fear Hiashi may be looking for me and he won't be too happy if he finds me here. I do thank you for this chance, even though I may not have deserved it. Most people deserve a second chance, Neji, some just don't get it. Nissan. Their eyes turned to Hinata as she wiped hers and looked up with the best smile she could muster. Come visit again sometime, Nissan. Neji just gave an awkward smile and a nod before he turned to leave. Seeing him coming towards them, Haku and Kin rushed past towards Hinata and Naruto as the latter got up to let Neji out. Hinata, what did he say to you? You're crying. Just wait till I. Kin was cut off as Hinata grabbed both of the other girl's hands. He apologized. She smiled as more tears rushed out. He apologized. She leapt into their arms as she happily cried, not ashamed at all that the other two were seeing her in such a state. Shish, Hinata. Shish. Haku combed her fingers through the girl's hair to comfort her. It seems Naruto-kun struck again, and if a bastard like Neji can change that much, maybe there is hope for this village yet. After Neji left and Hinata had settled down, the four of them talked about their recent missions over lunch, leaving out any gory details of course. Once finished and cleaned up, Naruto left the estate and headed towards the hospital to see what the old man wanted to talk to him about. It was always a hassle to get into the hospital, and today was no different. He was currently engaged in a shouting match with the receptionist and it didn't look like he would be winning anytime soon. I told you that Hokage-sama is not accepting visitors right now, so scram run before I call the Anbu to take you away for disturbing the peace. The woman shouted at him as she pointed towards the door. And I told you that I was sent here because I received a message saying he wanted to talk to me, so tell me which room he's in and you'll be able to lower your voice about 100 decibels so that people can rest again. He stood there and stubbornly glared at her. Sandaime-sama is getting along well enough without any detriments to the environment like you hanging around. Listen, lady. Let me put this in simple terms that you might comprehend. You let me see the old man or you can likely kiss your job goodbye for interfering in village affairs. The woman opened her mouth to give a retort but never got the chance as a familiar voice came to them from the side. Oh, Naruto-kun. What are you doing here? He was just leaving. Now get out of here, brat, and don't come back. The receptionist did her best to hastily push him out the door from behind the desk, but he simply sidestepped her attempts. Oh hey Shizune-san. I was asked to come here by Oji-san, and I seem to be having some trouble finding out what room he's in. He glared at the woman behind the counter as she huffed in annoyance. Well, if that's all it is, then I'll show you to his room myself. I was on my way to restock the bandages in his room anyway. True to her word, she was carrying a stack of medical supplies. As long as it's no trouble, sure. I'll even carry those for you if you want. Oh, thank you, and no trouble at all. Shizune-senpai. You can't seriously be thinking about letting him see the Hokage. And why not? If he was asked to come, then he should get there right away, shouldn't he? But he's. The woman seemed at a loss for words, but the stuttering and look of offense on her face told Shizune all she needed to know about the woman's disposition towards the boy. I suggest you keep such comments to yourself, and if I ever hear of you delaying an appointment with the Hokage again, I'll personally escort you out the door and make sure you're banned from the property, injured or not. The pair turned away, leaving a shocked nurse to stare at their backs. Thanks, Shizune-san. Naruto sighed as they walked away. No problem, Naruto-kun. Shizune was having trouble trying not to embrace the boy and found herself wondering yet again at how he could possibly be so strong. The two walked in silence all the way to the Hokage's room, stopping only briefly to knock on the door before entering. Hokage-sama, I brought you a visitor. I found him in the lobby trading barbs with the nurse on receptionist duty. Hey Oji-san. Naruto grinned at the old man, showing a smile reminiscent of the days before his graduation. The Sandaime smiled his grandfatherly smile in return, but it soon turned sad as he remembered what he had called the boy here for. Shizune, could you excuse us please? Huh. Oh, sure. I'll be on call, so if you need anything just let me know. She bowed before leaving, though not missing the suddenly somber mood. Once the door clicked shut, Hiruzen looked cautiously to Naruto. Naruto-kun. Before we begin, I just want to say how proud I am of you. Never in my life had I dreamed of seeing someone so strong and yet so caring. You have exceeded the expectations of myself and your father already, and I can only see great things in store for you. It saddened him a bit when Naruto gave a mirthless chuckle. They'll understand someday, Naruto. Don't worry. For now, though, we have a much more serious matter to discuss. Naruto was suddenly nervous. The look in the old man's eyes didn't bode well for him, and he knew that whatever the topic would be, it was going to strain his emotions. Naruto. We know who she is now. He almost regretted the words the instant they left his mouth. He saw the boy's features span an array of emotions, none of them good, before settling back into an empty stare. It pierced his soul to see the once cheerful boy look so dead inside. So, what are you planning to do, Hokage-sama? His monotone voice and empty stare was more than just a deadening of emotions. It was a shield against further shock to his system. An instinctual self-defense that he'd built up over the years. It helped him through both physical and mental trauma when necessary. It was the same tactic he'd used against Inoichi when the man would try to probe his memories, and he could tell that it unnerved anyone who witnessed it. The Hokage shook the sudden images of despair out of his head before addressing the blonde. I was hoping you could help me with that. You see, this wasn't just a case of rape. He flinched as he saw the boy flinch. This is also a case of abuse, physical and mental assault, endangerment of a minor, attempted murder, conspiracy, and instigating those same acts from others. He saw Naruto's head shoot up at the last part. What do you mean? He asked, his mask cracking a little. Naruto. Some of the fluids found on you, in you, were not fro Isako. Some of them she would not have had any access to whatsoever. This only leads to the belief that others were involved. Naruto. If you know anything else from that night, I need to know. I don't remember. After she. I just blacked out. I don't remember anything after that until I woke up. I just don't. Despite his guard, somehow the old man always seemed to worm his way around it with just a look. It was a good thing that he wasn't around when Inoichi was working on him before, or they would have found this out a long time ago, or was that really a good thing? Now he wasn't so sure. Sarutobi sighed again. If you don't remember, that's fine. We can try getting it out of Isako. It was your methods that Inoichi and Ibiki used to break her, you know. I have a good idea that we would find the sources for those methods if we took a close enough look at your medical records, but I don't think you want to dig up those memories right now. Once you're ready, we'll talk about what to do about Isako. I have already determined that her punishment will at the very least consist of lifetime imprisonment, but beyond that it's your call as long as it's nothing too absurd. I know how bad she hurt you, but there is such a thing as mercy. Naruto was silent for a long time. He contemplated all the things he had wanted to do to the Haruno since that day, and he considered whether they would still be worth it. He had planned his revenge so thoroughly, but now that it was at hand, he couldn't say whether or not he wanted to go through with it completely. After an hour of debating with himself as the patient next to him watched, Naruto finally had Isako's punishment planned out, and it wasn't going to be pretty if he had his way. As he came out of the room, Naruto looked around the hall. It had taken 30 minutes to give his plan to the Hokage, and another 2 hours to iron out the details. It would be less messy than he had wanted, but he had gotten most of what she deserved in the end. As he leaned his head against the wall in exhaustion, he turned to look at the source of the footfalls that were headed his way. Are you alright, Naruto? Hi. Are you sure? Hi. Shizune-san. I'm fine. Just a little tired. Wait here. He nodded as she quickly took the tray of food she held into the sandaime for his dinner. She returned in less than 5 minutes to find Naruto in the same position. Follow me. She led him down the hall a bit. Since this area had been vacated due to the Hokage being there, it wasn't difficult for her to find an empty room where they could have some privacy. She ushered him inside and sat him on the bed. She was nervous already, and could tell that he was too. What is it that you want, Shizune-san? Naruto. I want to know how you went on. I saw your files. Well, some of them. I haven't read through them all yet. I can't get through more than a few dozen a day without feeling like killing every person I see, so I want to know how you were able to do it. She lowered her head in shame. She knew she was digging up bad memories for him, but she really wanted. No, she needed to know. I see. Naruto closed his eyes and brushed a hand through his hair. This was quickly turning out to be one of those days. What would you do if someone told you that their whole life was a lie? Now it was Shizune's turn to be confused. A person can wear many faces depending on the situation. Some of us become so good at wearing those masks that they become a part of us, something to hide behind. Before I graduated from the academy, I played the part of the village idiot. I played pranks and got in trouble. I made myself fail tests and do poorly in every physical exam. All for the sake of hiding from everything. Shizune stared at him in awe. At that moment he seemed many years her senior rather than the other way around. It wouldn't have mattered anyway, of course. All my tests were rigged so I would fail, and by the time my most recent graduation came around, the traitor Mizuki decided to act. In the end, I was forced to cut my act in order to help someone precious to me. Iruka sensei was the only nice teacher I had, and I wasn't about to let that Tem kill him while I was there. I kicked his ass and earned my rank. After that, I decided that I would drop my mask and become the shinobi I had always prepared myself to be. So far though, I have only managed to slip it off part of the way. I think if I let it go any farther, and show the world my true self, I may lose what little I have. Naruto, would you drop your mask for me? Just for a second. Let me see the real you. He looked at her hesitantly before shaking his head. I'm sorry Shizune-san, but I can't. The only one that has come close to seeing it was Sarutobi Ojiazan, and I saw how much it killed him inside when he saw it. I won't put that on anyone else if I can help it. I'm no longer at my worst thanks to those I have gained in my life recently, but I am still far from what I am comfortable showing. Please, don't ask me such a thing again, and please stop digging in my records. There are things in there that no one needs to be reminded of. Then do me one favor. Let me look at one more record. The worst one, if you can remember it. She almost gasped in horror as she saw his face change. Despite his best efforts, he'd let himself slip a little before schooling his features back up. He stood and headed for the door, leaving the stunned woman in his wake. Stopping with his hand on the handle, he looked up at the ceiling as a lone tear streaked down his cheek. 4 years ago, October 12th. It's not the worst, but it should give you answers to multiple questions that you may have soon. Without waiting for a reply, he left her alone in the room to ponder his words. It would take the setting sun's rays landing on her face to bring her out of her daze. In another hour for her to stop crying. Tsunade opened the door to Sarutobi's room. She had been slightly confused at her apprentice's tear-streaked face as she passed her on the way, but the woman had always been soft and she simply attributed it to seeing a bad wound on a child or something of that nature. She was going to follow her into the records area, but decided she had more important things on her mind than the well-being of her traveling companion. Sensei. She whispered into the room, half hoping he wouldn't answer. When the light next to the bed flickered on, she stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind her. Hello Tsunade-chan. What brings you to my humble abode at this time of night? You'll have to excuse me for not offering you tea, but I admit I wasn't expecting visitors this late. He grinned at his student as she took up a seat next to him. Very funny sensei. She absent-mindedly started going over his chart as she sat there, setting it down on her lap when she saw there had been no changes. Sensei, do you remember Dan's dream? Or Naoki's? If I remember correctly, they both wanted to be Hokage. They were fine ninja. I believe they would have been admirable in the position. Hi, sensei. Do you think it would dishonor them if I took the position? Are you considering sticking around Tsunade? We could definitely use your help around this place. Too many good ninjas still lose their lives because of mistreatment. Your expertise would be invaluable. I don't think it would be right to take the dream of both of them. I just don't think I have what it takes to be a Kage. I've run away all these years and now these people are supposed to trust me with their lives. I don't know if I'm ready for that. None of us are ready for things like that, Tsunade. Imagine my surprise when I got assigned the position of Hokage at the same time that Nadime-sama was telling us that he was sacrificing himself for the sake of our futures. I was so ready to die for them, and yet he took the burden himself and placed his burden on my shoulders. That was long ago, Tsunade, and yet I can still feel the weight that pressed down on me. It felt like the whole nation was suddenly on a scale and I was the one who was forced to balance it out. If you think about it, your decision isn't nearly as strenuous. At least yours isn't during wartime. That doesn't make it any less of an important step. I suppose having their dreams live on through me, though, would in a way be honoring their memory. Yes, I believe so too. I think that both of them would want to see you move on. It's been too long, Tsunade, and you need to see that there is more than just the past in this world. Wheels are spinning and we need to be ready for the next major event. Good or bad, I am past the point that I can see it through. It's far past time that the mantle be passed on. Tsunade, will you bear this burden, and relieve the weight from this old man's shoulders once and for all? Silence enveloped the room for a few moments before she gave her reply. I will. Sarutobi smiled gently at the woman that sat beside him. A bit of pride ran through him in knowing that one of his students would now lead the village that he had so carefully guarded for so long. Then in 5 days you will be named Godime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato. Thank you, Tsunade. That night, the two discussed the meaning of their shared position and what it meant to care for the village and have it care for you in return. Chapter 29. Falling Cherry Blossoms. Once again Hinata found herself tending the garden when a Hyuga came to the gate. This time it was a female, small, slender and very young. Hinata almost cried out at the sight of her sister. The girls simply stood there and looked at each other for a few minutes until Hanabi arched an eyebrow and coughed to bring back her older sister's attention. Hanabi. What are you doing here? It had seemed so long since she had seen her sister that Hinata wasn't quite sure how to react. She wasn't even certain of her sister's standing on the issue of her getting banished from the clan. Would she be ashamed, angry, scornful? Hinata, you seem to believe you are above your position. I was led to believe that since you are no longer a Hyuga that you should address me as my station as clan heir dictates. The snobbish tone in her sister's voice immediately caused Hinata's brow to knit as her eyes narrowed. Perhaps that is the belief of your father, however many believe otherwise. Perhaps if your clan was indeed superior to everyone, then you would garner such respect. The Hyuga are not almighty though, and I would challenge anyone who says otherwise. We have all seen the results of such thinking. I fail to see your standpoint. We are the pinnacle of this village's hierarchy. Those who think otherwise should learn their place in the world. Just because we decided to cut out our defective members does not make us weak by any means. Tell that to Neji Nisan. The last time I saw him fight he ended up being taken away on a stretcher because of Naruto-kun. Hinata countered. Ah yes, your dear boyfriend the failure. Hanabi watched her sister's nostrils flare and smirked. He had to resort to cheap tricks in order to defeat one of us. Take away his tricks and he would be as helpless as you. We are ninja. We use what we have in order to win our battles. I understand you don't know a lot about the reality of the real world we live in, dear sister, but you will wake up soon enough. Once you become a full ninja, and kill, you'll understand. At least I hope you will. Well, if there is anything positive that came from you being shamed, at least you've dropped your annoying stuttering. Hanabi sneered. That's as because I had to grow up faster if I wanted to stand up to that man that supplied his genes for my birth. Naruto-kun helped me more than that egotistical asshole ever did. You watch your mouth about what you say about father. He is a great man, and you couldn't compare to him in a million years. He may seem a great man to you, but to me he's nothing but a disgrace that leads a disgraceful clan. Now it was Hinata's turn to smirk as her sister visibly fumed. I dare you to say that to my face. Open this gate and let me in and I'll show you just how weak you are. The small Hyuga ground out. No, I will not open the gate. Hanabi growled and was about to retort before Hinata beat her to it. No, it's not because I'm scared. This is not my estate and I am not authorized to let you in. Then I'll let myself in. Before Hinata could tell her to stop, Hanabi leapt over the wall. She waited for the inevitable, but was rewarded instead by a blue sphere of chakra enveloping her sister. Kaden. The poisoned Senbon were repelled back towards the wall as the younger girl landed. You see, sometimes his little tricks fail in the face of superiority. Now you will fight me. Without waiting for acknowledgement, Hanabi charged in and began her attack. I see. But what you don't seem to understand is that those tags are only part of the security. We are ninja, you know. We are our own defense as well. Hinata dropped into her modified stance, causing a smirk to pass over her sister's face. I apologize, but you have trespassed onto private property, and as one who resides here I am charged with assisting in its security. You may have been my sister, once, but right now you are nothing but a criminal and one more person against Naruto-kun. She waited until her sister was just about to hit her before making her move. Flowing like water, she ducked and spun. She couldn't see her opponent's face, but she imagined it was frozen in part denial and part shock as her hand snapped to Hanabi's thighs and shoulders, taking the strength from her limbs and rendering her practically helpless as she crumpled to the ground. How? Hanabi winced as she turned herself painfully to her back. Juken is flawed, Hanabi. At least it is for me. It took my time training with Naruto-kun to realize this. I find it funny that he discovered my problem as quickly as he did when our all-seeing eyes couldn't find it in all the years I was still part of the Hyuga. Juken isn't flawed, you're just flawed and can't use it properly. The younger girl spat back in rage. Perhaps, but then my flawed Juken just beat yours. Let me give you a little insight though, Hanabi-chan. All those years you beat me in our spars, I wasn't weak, I just didn't want to hurt my Imoto. Being a ninja means having no weaknesses. You weren't able to beat me because you couldn't set aside your weakness to do your job. That may have been true at one time, but, if you'd like, I am more than willing to put you in your place again if it would make you happier. Hanabi's arm began to twitch as the numbness began to abate. Once father hears about this, I won't have to worry about that ever again. He'll have you locked away for attacking the clan heir. You forget, Hanabi-chan, it was you who trespassed and attacked first. I merely defended myself. If you wish to tell that man that you were beaten in a fight that you started, feel free. I will be waiting here when he tries to seek damages. I'll simply tell him how I got in. Then you'll be drowning in Hyuga. You may be able to beat me, but how will you take on the entire clan? Simple. Those that watch over this place will notify the authorities that there is a traitorous uprising while we sit comfortably inside our house. The Anbu will find the Hyuga trespassing on this estate and they will be arrested while we drink tea. By this point it seemed that their roles had completely reversed. Hinata was looking down rather haughtily at her sister. Like a couple doors and some glass windows could keep a ninja out. Hanabi spat venomously back. Hinata then did something that completely unnerved the younger Hyuga. She laughed. Dear sister, you know nothing about this estate. Believe what you want, but Hiashi knows his limitations and he knows that the defenses of this estate are beyond his powers to breach. If you're so curious about them, then feel free to ask him because I am simply too busy to bother explaining them to you. Now, Hinata strode over to her recovering sibling and picked her up, throwing her over a shoulder before heading for the gate. Hanabi swore at her the entire way. When she was finally dumped into the street, she spun up to a knee and thrust out her hand. She could feel her tenketsu finally opening as her arm moved, but she was seconds too late as her strike hit the cold metal of the gate. She looked up into the face of her sister through the openings and glared at her hard. A few more seconds and it would have been you looking up at me. She snarled out. I know, dear sister, but I was also a Hyuga once. After all that sparring with you, father and everyone else, don't you think I would at the very least have the recovery time down to a science? Face it, Hanabi, I am no longer your weak older sister. I am a stronger person that is no longer part of that make-believe family. Hinata turned away, back towards the gardens. The glare that was trying to melt a hole through her back was nothing but an insignificant afterthought as she went over what had just happened. She was always afraid of hurting her little sister, but seeing her taking up the path of her father was something she did not want to see. She had decided to show the girl that she was not as strong as she thought. Taking her down so swiftly was sure to cause some waves in both the young girl and the rest of the Hyuga clan. There was a feeling in her that she wasn't too familiar with, pride. Not pride in her sister but in herself. She had been able to defend herself and Naruto's estate from her sister and came out on top with little effort. An emotion that she had thought she would feel was oddly missing. She felt no sadness in beating her sister. In fact, she felt very little of anything in regards to their actual fight. It wasn't that she had suddenly turned cold though. Instead, it was more because neither were seriously injured physically, and she had proven her point. The only part of the confrontation she didn't like was the possibility that Hanabi would convince her father to send some Hyuga over, armed with Kaden, to try to ransack the place. She could only hope that the law and the strain it would cause in relations with other clans would be enough of a deterrent. That or that they would get enough warning to get inside and activate the siege seals before anyone got too close. Regardless, she would have to tell Naruto and see what he thought. Isako screamed again as another welt was made on her, once flawless, skin. She was left panting and whimpering as she failed to hold back her tears. Why are you still doing this to me? I told you everything. Her tormentor just grinned at her. Even if we believed you, this is all a part of your punishment, so get used to it. My punishment for what? Trying to strengthen my own clan. Hurting a demon that deserved what he got. Planning for the future of Konoha. No, for kidnapping and raping a minor, torturing an innocent child, conspiring against the greater good of Konoha, corruption of a minor, attempted murder and attempted unwilling sterilization would be among your worst convictions. The man beside her, now steel-eyed torturer, informed her. I didn't sterilize him, he was already sterile. If you haven't noticed, my only child is his age. He has been tested after the event you forced upon him, and it has been shown that he is far from sterile. I guess you were just unlucky, or barren yourself. Of course, it doesn't surprise me that you would seek fault in others as long as it turned it away from yourself. Then there is of course your constant breaking of the Sandame's law. We can't have that, of course. So as a finalization of your punishment, it has been ordered that most of your crimes be made public knowledge and you will be executed with a limited audience after this week is over. I hope the knowledge that you've helped ruin someone's childhood, and possibly his ability to ever have a normal relationship, was worth it in the end. Like that demon could ever have anyone love him. He's just a fiend that deserves to die. They will understand, and soon enough I'll be back where I belong and you will be the one chained to this slab of metal. And who would that be? The council. They threw you aside already. Why do you think you're still here? They know they have no say in the matter because of how far you've taken things. Now, I suggest you be the trooper we all know you are and take your punishment as it comes. We have a lot of treatments and not a whole lot of time to fit them all in. We have a busy schedule, you know. Lots of criminals like yourself to keep in line. I am not a criminal. Isako's venomous voice was drowned out as another hot wire was whipped across her back. Her defiant speech was lost in her sobbing as the pain tore through her. Keep it up, Anko. If we keep up the pace, we should be able to fit everything in and still get our breaks. I can't wait until this week is over and we can finally say goodbye to this refuse. Hi. Well, looks like you and me get to have some fun today. I always wanted to give my compliments to the council for the way I was treated. Anko sashayed over to her tray of toys to select her next. They sat there and watched as their sensei and teammate played shogi. It wasn't the most exciting thing in the world to do, but they had just gotten back from a mission, so the break was welcome. Had it been any other situation, Ino would have already dragged her protesting sensei out into the training field and make him teach them something. After her defeat at the hands of Sakura, she felt she really needed to improve. After Sakura's defeat at the hands of Kin, she realized just how pathetic she was. That was all the motivation she needed in order to improve. Of course, her teammates didn't always see eye to eye with her new attitude. Shikamaru would always complain about how the new training was too troublesome to do. Choji would start his complaints not long after they started anything strenuous, telling them he needed to recharge his reserves via food consumption. Despite their grumblings, Ino managed to get them to gradually get stronger. On days that she wasn't meeting with her team, she would go and train with the other girls at Naruto's estate, or Naruto himself when he was in. It irked her a little that he wasn't around as much as he used to be, considering his new status. That, coupled with his lack of clan duties, put him in a prime spot to be available for a lot of mission, and from what she heard, he was being used for just that. Still, it was rather impressive that he would do so much when her own teammate was also a Chunin and simply didn't have the motivation to even offer to lead a team. Sure, he'd had to a couple times, but other times he managed to get out of it by claiming he had clan duties to attend to. Choji. Yeah, Ino. Have you ever been in love? The sputtering and spitting from the chubby boy was loud enough to gain a small bit of attention from their sensei and other teammate for a moment before they went back to their game. What are you saying, Ino? I used to think I was in love with Sasuke back in the academy, but then he. And now I think I'm in love with Naruto-kun, but how can I be sure? Was I ever really in love before? This feels different than what I felt for Sasuke, but how do I know which one is love and which isn't? I could have really been in love with Sasuke until he did that, or I could really be in love with Naruto-kun now. It's really confusing, so I figured that if I could get some help from someone else, it could help clear things up for me. So you're asking me? I mean, don't get me wrong. Women swoon over the plump powerhouse, but we both know I'm not exactly smooth with the ladies. Choji semi-joked, letting Ino chuckle a little. I know, Choji, but love can be one-sided too, you know. Just because they don't love you doesn't mean you can't love them. Look at Hinata before Naruto asked her out. Quote. Oh come on, Choji. There's someone for everyone. You'll find a nice girl eventually. Ino tried her best to comfort him, suddenly regretting bringing up the topic. Yeah, I guess. I just don't see her ever seeing someone like me, and how would my parents think of me getting together with a civilian? They always wanted me to look for a strong woman to marry. Ino sat there looking at him with her mouth hanging open. She snapped out her days and grinned, scaring him slightly. Well. So Choji-kun has his eye on someone. Care to elaborate? Weren't we just talking about you? Yes, but something much more interesting came up. Now, spill. She leaned over towards him conspiratorially. Choji sighed. He knew he couldn't get out of this if he tried. Ino, the queen of gossip, was on his trail and he was already backed into a corner. Alright, it's okay, that's enough training for today. Get some rest and we'll see about getting a mission tomorrow. Asuma announced as he was thoroughly trounced by Shikamaru yet again. Choji had taken the moment to get a head start on his timely exit. Unfortunately for him, Ino had gotten much fast thanks to her increased training schedule. He soon found himself restrained by the blonde tornado. Come along, Choji-kun. You can tell me about her over a good bowl of ramen. Ino missed the boy's horrified face as she dragged him away from the training ground. Behind them, Asuma turned to his last remaining student. So, what do you think will happen? Either Choji is going to be too embarrassed to talk for at least a week, or he's going to be asking for some time off soon. The two looked at each other and couldn't help but burst into laughter. Despite having just left the interrogation department, Anko was nervous. The reason? She was on a self-imposed mission, the likes of which she had never taken on before. She decided it was far past time that she did the right thing, and if she was ever going to be relieved of her own burden, then she needed to do this now. An apology. Simple, easy, and something she had done only once before in her entire life. Back then she was pleading for her life though, so it was more something she had to do than something of her choice. Turning onto the street that held his estate, Anko couldn't help but feel her apprehension shoot up even more. She suddenly felt like she was in the hall in the interrogation building, on her way to her own torture session. Before she knew it, she was standing outside the front gate and staring inside. It wasn't that it was difficult to admit when she was wrong, but admitting it to someone else was an entirely different story. Her choice was taken away from her though as she heard the scuffing of feet settling on the ground behind her. Can I help you, Mitarashi-san? She winced a bit at his tone as she spun around to look at him. Ah, hey, She suddenly found herself at a loss for words. The apology she had been working on the whole way over, despite its shortness, was lost. Naruto stood there for a few minutes, watching the woman fumble with her words before a sigh of annoyance escaped his lips. Listen, if you're just going to stand there, could you please move? I have things to do inside my house, which you seem to be very content in blocking. Oh, Anko quickly stood aside and looked a little ashamed for a second before strengthening her resolve as much as possible. Listen, runt. I came to apologize for my comments in the hospital. Because of my position, I was told about exactly what happened. I see. So it's pity then. No thanks. Have a nice day, Mitarashi-san. Wait. The gate clanged shut behind Naruto, but he stopped on the other side. If you're truly sorry, then just make sure you choose the right side when push comes to shove. Anko was shocked at his statement, but surprise quickly turned into anger. Are you questioning my loyalty to Konoha brat? She growled a bit as she attempted to glare him into submission. Naruto just turned his head to the side slightly, giving her a view of his profile. In a way, snake whore, of Konoha. How dare you? Yes, how dare the demon boy call you that? Right. How dare I remind you of where you stand in this village? We're more alike than you think, Anko. You're just the next step down from me on the hatred scale, don't forget that. Before she had a chance to ask what he was getting at or even throw a retort his way, he was already closing his front door. She hadn't even realized he'd been walking away from her. Naruto let out a frustrated sigh as he entered his house. He leaned back against the door as he closed his eyes and just stood there, soaking in the calm feeling he got from the building. He wouldn't have been surprised if his dear old dad had somehow made it that way. Whatever the case, it helped ease the tension out of his shoulders. It didn't go away completely, of course, it never did, but it was still a relief. Over the past year he had been subject to an emotional roller coaster like never before. Sure, his emotions has fluctuated before, but it wasn't until recently that he had some new emotions thrown in. Friendship, companionship, kindness from more than just the old man and a couple of cooks, acceptance, happiness. Going from those good emotions to all of his worst emotions and back again was putting a lot of strain on his mind that he wasn't used to. I wonder how long it will take me to snap with things going like this. He half-jokingly wondered to himself. He was brought out of his musings as he heard some footsteps coming towards him. Naruto-kun. Hi, Haku-chan. She was taken slightly off guard. He sounded more tired than he normally did recently. Is something wrong? He cracked his eyes open and looked at her. He could see the worry shrouding her features and couldn't help but sigh again. He used his shoulders to push himself off the door as he wiped his face with his hands. Haku, could you gather the girls, please? We need to talk about some things and it might as well be now. She waved off his tone as exhaustion as she helped him over to the couch. Are you sure? You look like you're about to collapse. He took her hand in his and kissed it slightly, causing her cheeks to redden slightly. I'm sure. If I don't do it now, I may not get a chance to do it myself later. Leaning back into the cushions, he let out a slow breath. Oh, okay. Do you want Ino-chan and Tenten-chan too? She waited a few minutes as she watched his eyes move under his lids. She was about to ask again when he answered. I suppose they should hear this too. Actually, bring as many of the rookies as you can. It's about time the skeletons come out, and it'll be better if they hear it from me than someone else. Quote. All right. What should I tell them for a reason? I'm sure you'll think of something. I'll be out back. He slowly got up and half stumbled to the door, making Haku a little nervous as to whether or not she should really leave him alone or not. Despite her better judgment, she decided to do as he said and set about gathering the others of his graduating class as well as kin. Something big was going to happen soon, and from his condition, she guessed it was only going to be a one-time show. Best she get her part over with as soon as possible too. An hour later had most of the familiar genin as well as the newly appointed chunin assembled in the backyard of the estate. Some were waiting a little more patiently than others, but they all showed up, which was more than he expected really. He took a deep breath before walking out into the open, bringing all of their eyes to bear on him. Oi! What the hell did you drag us all here for? Kiba got a quick punch in the gut from Kin as she admonished him for his behavior, earning herself a sneer in return. Yes, Naruto-kun. We wish to know why your flames of youth seem to be barely burning lately. Naruto just waved Lee off warily as he took a seat in front of them. Most of the girls present made to sit with him, but he motioned them to sit with the others as well. He wasn't at all sure how anyone was going to react to this news, so he didn't want them to be too close should they react poorly. Everyone shut up. I have a lot to tell you and none of it is going to be easy, for any of us. That got their attention instantly. Naruto, is this about your father? All eyes shot to Shikamaru, including Naruto's, whose were narrowed dangerously, causing the Nara to gulp. No, Shikamaru. It is not about my parents, and I would thank you for not talking about them. He pinned his fellow Chunin with a glare that told the boy that he would be rewarded with death if he finished his train of thought. Naruto knew the Nara were smart, and to be honest, it wouldn't take that much a thought process to make the connection, but he didn't need certain people in attendance to know that much about him. Specifically, a certain mutt that would just love to get some dirt on him. Then is it about the glares and stuff? Choji asked between bites of his chips. Naruto's gaze shifted to him, then back to the Nara. He sighed in exasperation before letting a small chuckle escape his lips. Should have known. You two are attached at the hip sometimes, I swear. Yes, that is part of it, the first part really. If you chose to stay for the rest of what I have to say, that's up to you. If not, then one of my clones will be at the gate to let you out. He looked over the small crowd. They were his comrades, friends, teammates, loved ones, precious people. For the most part, they were the few that stuck with him through everything so far, the only exception being Kiba, but he figured that once he stated the law, the boy would, at most, let his mother know that he knew. Despite knowing their disposition towards him, he began to wonder how many he would still be able to count amongst those after this. No doubt you have seen, or at least heard about, my treatment from the village. He watched them all nod in affirmation. Well, there are things you don't see as well as the reasons behind such things. I'm not one for pity, so I'll just go right to the reason. You all remember the story of the Kyuubi from the academy. More nods. The Yondaime killed the demon and saved the village, more or less, end of story. What about it? Neji asked. No, that's not quite true, is it, Naruto? Always the studious one, Shikamaru. Naruto shook his head. No, the story you were told was a cover-up. They were thoroughly confused now for the most part. The only ones that seemed to not care at the moment were Shikamaru and Choji. Even the girls seemed a bit wary of what was going to come out of his mouth. He felt his chest tighten when he saw that. Before I tell you what really happened though, I have to tell you about a certain law. The law states that anyone who reveals the information I'm about to tell you will be executed. Then don't tell us, Naruto-kun. We don't want you to put yourself in danger. Don't worry, Hinata-chan. I'm exempt from that law. You're exempt from a law. Why the hell would you be exempt from a law with a death penalty? Kiba asked as though it was completely unfair that someone should have such a privilege. It's because the law revolves around him or takes him into account in some way. Shikamaru theorized. Correct. The law was made by the Sandaime shortly after the Kyuubi was defeated. It was made so that the younger generation wouldn't be privy to certain information that those who were old enough to remember the attack knew about. Understand that after I tell you what I plan on telling you, that you will be bound by that law as well, so if you are uncomfortable with that, then I ask that you leave now. Unfortunately, those that he half hoped would take the opportunity to leave were too enthralled to care about some law that they didn't care about since they didn't know what it was hiding. Seeing no one was willing to leave, Naruto stretched back into the grass a bit, putting his hands on the ground behind him for support while he gazed up into the sky. Sugar coating is pointless now. The Yondaime couldn't kill the Kyuubi, so he sealed it in me. He waited for the yells, the accusations, the beating. When nothing came, even a whisper, he chanced to look at his audience. Most had their mouths open, trying to form words. Others had a more studious look about them as though they were choosing their words carefully before speaking. He decided to fill the void by elaborating. The term for my kind is Jinchuriki. It means power of human sacrifice, which is what the Yondaime was when he decided to seal the demon inside me. The strength of his conviction to save this village, a village he loved with all his soul, was enough to warrant the power he needed to seal the Kyuubi. It would only cost him his soul, but he already knew that. He also knew that it was his only option. I don't blame him for what he did, but I was told that his last wishes were that the village treat me like a hero. Finally, some of them found their voices, and the reactions were as varied as the people. You have the Kyuubi sealed inside you. After a nod, Kiba continued. No wonder everyone hates you. They think you're tainted from it. Wait till I tell. He was stopped from getting up when a small white blur slammed into his chest. He looked at it to find a growling Akamaru. I think your partner has proven once again that he's smarter than you, Kiba. If you go around blabbing about this, you're as good as dead. You might as well walk into Iwagakure with a Konoha flag strapped to your back. Choji noted, causing the boy to pale with the realization. So, is that how you beat me in the Chunin exams? You used its power, didn't you? Neji narrowed his eyes in suspicion. Naruto sighed again. Yes, Neji. It's how I reopened all of my tenketsu after your attack. Other than that though, the fight was all me. By the way, just so you know, doing that hurt like hell. So if you didn't have that thing in you, you probably would have lost. No, if I didn't have it in me, I would have grown up normally with a proper education instead of having to rely on myself to learn correctly. As such, I would have been a lot more wary of what you were doing instead of letting myself be caught up by your attack. Of course, that's just a guess, but I think it's pretty accurate. Naruto clarified. Perhaps. Neji may have lost his father, but at least he had help getting trained. If he's sealed in you, then you have a seal on you somewhere, right? Tenten looked the most curious of everyone there as she seemed to be scanning his body. Other than my training seals, there is one more on my stomach. It's the seal that keeps the Kyuubi at bay, but it only shows up when I channel chakra. See, can we see it? Trying to get me naked already, Tenten-chan. He chuckled as the girl blushed, along with some of the others, at the insinuation. He lifted his shirt a bit anyway and molded a little chakra, letting the seal appear briefly before he stopped. Satisfied. It's definitely a complex seal, that much is certain. Neji confirmed. I would hope so. It would be kind of sad if the strongest Biju was held back with the simplicity of a storage scroll. Harum deadpanned as Shino nodded in agreement next to her. Neither looked very fazed by the information. Not too surprising on account of Shino having insects inside him and yet not growing wings himself. Sounds like something Orochimaru would do, except his reasons would be a lot less honorable. Even if his sacrifice did make your life hell, at least his heart was in the right place. Kin grumbled out. Ino didn't seem to know what to think. Her own life was going through loops lately, and now this. Despite that, she tried her best to give a supportive smile. If nothing else, she owed him that much. After all, a demon wouldn't have saved her. A demon would have joined in. He looked the last two girls in the group, Hinata and Haku. Both had been listening to what the others had to say before looking at each other. They nodded and stood, walking towards Naruto, but again he motioned for them to sit again. He smiled at them to comfort their worries, but even so they sat closer to him than they had been. If nothing else, the fact that they were still comfortable with him made him elated. You said that they did more than just glare at you, Naruto-kun. What else did they do? Lee asked. I also said that I didn't want pity, so I'm not going to tell you about that. We all have some secrets we want to keep. Lee looked a little ashamed along with the others that had been eagerly awaiting his answer to that question. He took his previous relaxed position once again. But because of events happening in a few days, you will probably end up finding about one of those events. He couldn't help but let some bitterness enter his voice, shocking those who had never heard him speak that way. Kiba, I want you to leave for this part. You too, Neji. What? Why? Because, honestly, I don't trust either of you to keep this a secret. Even though there is no law surrounding this one, I don't want a whole lot of people to know right away, so either you leave or I escort you out. He gave a small dark undertone to his last statement to get his message across. Che, I get it. Like I want to hear about how you got spanked by some shopkeeper because you were painting graffiti on his walls. He nearly wet himself from the killing intent that hit him, but when he looked at the source he found that he wasn't staring at Naruto, but four of the girls instead. Kiba, get out. Now. The Inuzuka was forced to run for his life as a small rain of kunai came soaring at him. The four sets of eyes looked at the older Hyuga in challenge. The boy just turned and walked towards the front gate, not letting them see how much he was sweating under the pressure. Once Naruto's clone dispelled, telling him that the two were indeed gone, he closed his eyes and continued. Thank you, girls. The reason I wanted them gone is because this is a sensitive topic that very few know about. That group is growing lately, but I still want to keep it contained as long as possible simply because it's my life. Four of you already know about what I'm going to talk about, well, some of it. He looked pointedly at the four who defended his choice of kicking the two others out. They found out who she was. Hands shot to mouths or throats as the four girls found it rather hard to breathe at the moment. Their reactions confused the rest as even Shikamaru had no idea what was going on. WH when? WH who? I'll answer in a second, but first I should bring the others up to speed, don't you think? He didn't wait for their approval as he continued. This event happened while we were still in the academy, during one of my more extended absences. After class 1 was walking home when I got blindsided and kidnapped. I was taken into a cellar where I was raped, tortured, and left for dead. He watched the blood leave the faces of everyone present. Even those that already knew found themselves growing colder simply from the lack of emotion on Naruto's face. Thankfully, I guess, I was unconscious for a lot of it. I have no doubt that some of the concoctions she injected into me would have been excruciatingly painful otherwise. I found out that she had special suppliers around town that supported what she did and sold her some special materials that they guaranteed would leave lasting scars, or simply cause my brain to shut down from the pain. Yet, here you are. Shino noted simply. That's one thing about the fox, I don't know if he does it willingly or not, but I have highly advanced healing. Every stab wound, every burn from acid or fire, every bruise and broken bone, even the sterilization she tried. All of it was healed over the time I was absent. Another shiver went through them as some of what he went through was described. Choji was a lot greener than the others and proved that the tales were getting to him when he hurriedly picked up one of his empty chip bags and filled it with the contents of his stomach. Even Lee sat quietly as he tried to keep his own face from matching the color of his outfit. After taking a few minutes to recompose themselves, Shikamaru finally got his mouth working again. You said that this was necessary to understand something that was coming up soon. You all know that 3 people that are rather well known, at least to us, were put in prison recently. Yeah, Uchiha and the 2 Haruno bitches. Harume scoffed out before her mind caught up with her mouth. Yes, during their initial interrogation of Isako Haruno, she said enough to confirm that she was the one that kidnapped me. Apparently she got it into her head that breeding with a Jinchuriki would somehow bring out a new bloodline. It's not entirely unfounded, but after she figured she was as close to getting pregnant as she could, she decided to make herself the only one that could use that source. Now she's going to pay for her supposed good intentions. She's currently going through a rather rigorous torture session with Ibiki and Anko. Inoichi chose to stay out of it since he was afraid that if he got involved then she wouldn't make it to the end and still know what was being done to her. At the end of the week she will finish her punishment. He looked away from them a bit, again questioning how they would take the news. Will she be released again, or is she going to rot in prison like she deserves? Ino growled out. She would give anything right now to take her father's spot in the interrogation department. Forget the rest of her punishment. She would rape the woman's mind until there was nothing left. After her torture is finished, she's going to be executed in a private area with a limited audience. She'll have the choice of seppuku, but her second has been instructed to be prepared to take that honor away from her. He answered, still not looking at them. You're still not telling us everything, are you, Naruto? Where are you going to be when this happens? Kin asked, not sure she wanted to know the answer. Me. Hey, I get the best seat in the house. I'll be holding the sword. He heard the gasps behind him and knew what they were thinking. He's going to kill the mother of one of our classmates. Would probably be the thoughts of those his age. For the rest it would most likely be along the lines of, he's going to kill one of the council members. What he didn't fully expect was to be embraced by anyone so quickly. He turned around to see both Hinata and Haku latched onto him with Kin seemingly trying to find her own spot to grab a hold of. He couldn't help himself and looked towards Ino and Tenten to see that both were in some quiet contemplation as they fidgeted on the grass. Is that why you saved me? Because of your own past? Ino asked tentatively. He saw Kin flinch as well and wondered if she was thinking the same thing. No, Ino. Well, maybe in part, but mostly I did that because it was the right thing to do. I can't honestly tell you what I would have done if I hadn't had the past I did, but I'd like to think that I would have acted the same. Right now though I'm more concerned about my other announcement. Aren't you all scared of me or anything? I mean, I'm the same type of thing as Gaara is. It was Tenten who called him out this time. No, you're not. Gaara is a psychopath. He didn't care for anyone. He would have let any one of us suffer, if not kill us himself. Look what he did to Lee. Sure, he can still be of use by throwing, and as long as he's careful not to use his injured limbs, he can still fight, but Gaara was still remorseless in what he did. Not to mention, he would have killed Lee if Guy Sensei hadn't gotten involved. Quote. Thank you, Tenten. That means a lot. He gave her a soft smile as he hugged the other girls close. Silence reigned again for the next few minutes, with everyone still lost in their own thoughts. Well, if you're all willing to stick around, I think we could scrounge up something to eat. I don't know about all of you, but I'm kind of hungry right now. As if they just remembered they still existed, a chorus of grumbles echoed from numerous stomachs. Everyone grinned a little sheepishly. Guess that answers that. A knock on the door alerted her that she was about to have a guest. Enter. She shuffled some papers to the side and took another sip of her sake before grabbing more from the opposite pile. Tsunade-sama. Getting into the job already, I see. Yeah, well, if I'm going to be taking this damn job, I might as well get some of this crap out of the way. What do you need, Shizune? She didn't even look up, at least not until some more files were laid on the desk. Only then did she look up into the face of her apprentice to see the grim look she sported. What are these? Medical records for Uzumaki Naruto. Shizune, I don't have time to look at the Gaki's past injuries. Just put them back and I'll start going over things like that later. She waved the girl off as she turned back to her paperwork. No. You need to read these, Tsunade-sama. This isn't all of them either, just a few of the files and one that he pointed to me personally. It relates to. Listen, Shizune, I'm sure that all his bruises and broken bones are very interesting, but Sarutobi-sensei has been in the hospital for well over a month, and this paperwork is so stacked up that I don't have time to look at any medical files right now. I'm not even sure that I'll be able to take a break to get food. As it stands, I'm going to be here for at least a week just to make a dent in this crap. And if that wasn't bad enough, most of it is the civilian council asking for crap from ninja, or rights that should only go to ninja, or the development of some training grounds into more shopping areas or to be made into lavish houses. Don't these people realize that this is a ninja village? I'm going to leave these files here anyway. If you decide you need a break, please look through them. It may change your opinion of Naruto-san. Shizune lowered her head a bit, letting a tear escape her eye, but it went unnoticed by the older woman. Sure, whatever. Could you go get me something for supper and some more sake too? I'm almost out. Thanks, Shizune. She knew a dismissal when she heard it and went about her assigned task. She couldn't fault her mentor. She had a point, there was an awful lot of paperwork there. Naruto had crashed into his bed almost as soon as the last person left. It felt good to get that off his chest, somewhat, but now he would have to live with the consequences. There was hesitancy amongst those that came. He wasn't quite sure what to think about Ino or Tenten, since neither seemed to make a move to come near him, even if they seemed to understand his point. Either way, the next week would prove to be interesting. He woke up a couple days later, a little later than usual due to his heavy training the day before. He looked down at the faces that greeted him. Despite his arguments against it, all three girls seemed adamant to sleep with him until this ordeal was over or he was back to his normal self, whichever came last. It had caused some rather uncomfortable situations on numerous occasions. Despite common beliefs, it is not always comfortable to wake up with someone else laying on top of you, especially when arms or legs are pressing into painful places. After one such painful event, he decided that it would be in his own best interest to forbid them to sleep completely on him when it was 3-on-1. This led to a couple cute pouts since they all wanted to be near him, but that only lasted until he told them that they would all be kicked out of his room if they didn't agree. Feelings or not, he wasn't going to go through life with bruises in uncomfortable places. This morning it was Kin to his right, Haku to his left, and Hinata to her left. They looked so peaceful that he hated himself for what he was about to do. It never failed when more than one was here that he would always wake one of them when he got up and try to drag him back down. Firming his resolve, he began to move out of their grasp, trying his best to be careful, but it was for naught. Naruto-sama, don't get up yet. Kin tiredly whined as he attempted to unwind her arm from his. I have an important appointment to go to today, Kin, you have to let me go now. He whispered back. She stubbornly tightened her grip on his arm. Don't wanna. Kin. He lowered his voice with an underlying threat. Let go. Ah. She poked her lower lip out, but complied. Go back to sleep. I'll be back for lunch. What appointment is so important that it can't wait for another hour? She propped herself up on her elbows as she watched him gather his clothes, a position that accentuated her own growing assets, though it was difficult to tell in the low light. One that none of you are allowed to go to. So just, go back to sleep, please. She narrowed her eyes at him, unable to comprehend what he was talking about in her sleep-hazed brain. Fine. Leave then. She quickly collapsed on the bed and turned towards the others, making Naruto wince at the possibility of the action waking the others. Thankfully they only stirred a little, so he grabbed the rest of his gear and made a quick exit in order to change in the bathroom. The last thing he would need is for Kin to try to jump him when he was exposed. Once he was dressed, he got a quick bite to eat. There was no meeting of anyone in the halls this time, no waking of anyone else in the house, so he silently slipped out and made his way towards the interrogation building. This was the day that a large part of his torment would end, a day that he would be freed from the torture of seeing what he considered a true demon. If that was the case, then why was he so reluctant to keep his path? He found himself wondering if Ichiraku's was open, even though he was already pressed for time. Doing his best to ignore his own apprehension, Naruto placed another foot forwards and continued on his way. It seemed like it took hours to get to the building and another half at least to just open the door. He wasn't sure if he actually heard the lady at the counter talking to him, but he felt himself nod before taking a seat on a nearby bench. By the time the two Anbu came to pick him up, it felt like he was watching himself from outside as they lead him down numerous dark halls. The blood that was pounding in his ears kept him from hearing their footsteps as they approached a large metal door. The door swung open to reveal a seating area, which by this time was already mostly filled. Whether more would come he wasn't certain, but there were already many important figures present. All but one of the clan heads gave him a sympathetic look. It made him queasy. Hiashi and the civilian council members had murder in their eyes as they shot looks between him and the last notable figure in the room. The Sandaime gave him the best encouraging smile he could manage in such a situation. All of them were situated in chairs overlooking a small empty stage. The Anbu lead him down the stairs leading to the stage, and it suddenly felt like he was the one that was about to be executed. He had to fight his own instincts in order to keep from running out of the room, even so he couldn't keep a few shivers from crawling over his body. As they approached the stage, it only became more foreboding. Spotlights shined down on the empty shackles, illuminating the already stained wood that they were attached to. Dried blood covered both the metal and the boards, significantly more so on the latter. To one side sat a table covered with a cloth. Odd lumps in the fabric only hinted at what lay underneath. The small procession came to a halt at the back of the stage and turned crisply towards the audience. He watched the Sandaime straighten and announce the accusations and sentencing. The fact that he didn't ask for any last-minute objections was not lost on him, and he silently thanked the old man for not allowing this to be drawn out any longer than it seemed to be. His brief reprieve from the tension was interrupted by the sound of another door opening. To the side of the stage, a second metal door swung wide and banged against the wall. Instantly, they could all hear the muffled screams coming from the room beyond as the prisoner was dragged forward. Naruto unconsciously stepped a little further into the shadows, unknowingly hiding his paling face. Pink hair peeked out from between two more Anbu as the woman was dragged unceremoniously to the shackles and locked in place. Her legs were clamped tight against the stage at the ankles and knees to keep her in place, while the arm shackles would allow her to move somewhat freely. Again the Sandaime said his piece as the woman seemed to be pleading behind her gag. It was obvious that her own objections meant nothing, as her tears hit the boards, creating the first wet spots of the day. He looked at her from his place in the shadows. Her hair was streaked with caked blood, most likely from the times that she was hung upside down and beaten. Her ears were mostly gone, along with 3 toes on each foot. They had dressed her simply in a long robe in order to hide her body, but from the blotches of red on it everyone could tell that the damage was not limited to her extremities. The Hokage said something to the guards and they whipped their heads up in surprise. The counselors turned to him with horror on their faces and he could tell that they were trying to argue with whatever he said, but when his face tightened up and he spat something out it was clear the argument was over. Isako hung her head in defeat as the Anbu grabbed her robe from the back and tore it off, earning a groan of pain from the woman. As her body was revealed, all her wounds became obvious. Burns, holes, scrapes and scratches. Patches of skin were either missing or hung loosely off her body. Welts from whips and hot irons were spread across her back, legs and arms. He couldn't see it but he imagined her front was the same. They must have at least attempted to clean her a little, there wasn't nearly enough blood streaks to account for the number of wounds. Blood was pounding in his ears again. He noticed that the majority of the wounds matched up with his own wounds after that event. He knew, he'd seen the pictures. The Sandaime spoke up once again and Isako looked up at him, shocked. He waved at the table beside her and an Anbu took the sheet off. A small stand was taken and placed in front of the woman. Another cloth was pulled off of it to reveal a small dagger. Isako shook her head violently and pleaded around her gag for mercy, at least he assumed that's what she was trying to say given the situation. The old man shook his own head before nodding over to Naruto. He felt himself pushed in the direction of the table and noticed the other objects. A katana, polished to a high shine and a gourd. Grabbing the sword in one hand and the gourd in the other, he poured the contents of the container over the blade. The sound must have alerted Isako to the presence behind her, as she turned her head as best she could to see him. When their eyes met her face contorted into rage and she grabbed the tanto from the stand in front of her as she tried to get within reach to stab him. The shackles held firm though and she merely succeeded in swinging the blade towards her own side. She was able to catch herself before the blade ever met flesh, but that would be her own dishonor as the tanto was forcefully removed from her hand by one of the guards and placed out of her reach. Naruto slowly walked over to her side, being sure to stay out of the reach of her arms as she swung them wildly about. Suddenly she found herself unable to do even that as the chains of the shackles were pulled down through holes in the platform and her hands hit the boards near her knees, forcing her upper body to stick out from the rest. Fear replaced rage as she looked for help amongst the crowd. Some turned their heads away while the Hokage simply looked at Naruto and nodded. He rose the sword above his head, trying to ignore his own shaking. His mind traveled back to that night. The look on her face, the feeling in his chest, the fear in his own mind. He remembered the scorn she gave him and the pain that followed her actions. He thought about the pictures of what he had looked at afterward when Oji-san wanted to know how some of the marks were made. He couldn't answer then, but he had a good idea now. After what seemed like the most tense moment in his life, for some reason all of his apprehension washed away. The blade stopped shaking, his eyes hardened and he swung. With a spray of blood, Isako's head lolled forward as her body slumped to the floor. The only thing keeping her head from rolling off the stage was a small strip of skin on the front that kept it attached to her neck. A perfect strike. He wasn't about to dishonor himself by going farther. He swung the blade once to get the blood off before setting it back on the table. There wasn't a sound in the room as he walked to the back of the stage. No one moved as he crouched down. The only cue they got that the spectacle was finished was the moment his Heaves brought up his breakfast and spilled it over the edge of the planks. He could hear some shouting as he pitched forward and darkness took him. He woke up in another room. He guessed he was still in the prison compound since it was the same stone. He could feel the person nearby and it was slightly comforting to know he was there. How long was I out? About 2 hours. No one blames you, Naruto, so don't feel ashamed. We all knew what she did and even those who were against you were rather abhorrent of her actions after they found out her true motives. Certain people more than others when it was noted that she could have effectively made her family part of a clan if one of their men had been in your place. Of course she probably would have met her fate a lot quicker had that been the case. Why wasn't Tsunade there? Oh, she was busy sleeping. She's been having some late nights catching up on our paperwork. She's not one for these types of things anyway, being a medic and all. She agreed on the paperwork to get out of spectating. The Sandaime half chuckled. You did miss her coronation though. She's now officially the Hokage, and of course everyone cheered for her. Quote. That's okay. I wouldn't have been very welcome anyway. Now don't say that. You are a ninja of this village. You should be proud of your new Hokage. The old man scolded. Yeah, maybe, and maybe she'll grow up someday and get over the fact that I made her do something she didn't want to do. Honestly, Gigi-san, she acts like more of a kid than Konohamaru. Ha, she does indeed. Well, she'll have to grow up now. She has responsibilities to an entire village now, and if the paperwork doesn't break her, then the council will. Quote. Quote. How do you feel, Naruto? The old man seemed his age suddenly. The sorrow in his eyes spread to the rest of his features the longer they sat there. Naruto sat up and pulled his legs to his chest. In truth, I'm not sure. Everything feels the same even though I know it's not. I thought I would feel safer, you know. I thought maybe there would be a slim chance that this would make it all okay. Naruto, what she did to you took a lot from you. Isuko's death isn't going to make everything alright instantly. Give it time. I already have you scheduled to talk to Inoichi later if you feel you need to. Just don't close it off. Bottling things up will only make it worse. You have others living with you, talk to them. I'm sure they will be more than sympathetic. I will. Thank you for being here when I woke up, Oji-san. It means a lot to me. If it makes you feel better, we had to remind a certain set of admirers of yours that they weren't allowed to come here multiple times before they gave up and set up a post outside the building. They refuse to go anywhere until they see you're okay. Well, I guess I better stop making them worry then, huh? Naruto threw a smile on his face with such practiced ease that it nearly broke Hiruzen's heart. Naruto got up off the cot they put him in and opened the door before wheeling the old man out into the hall. They chatted about nothing in general as they made their way to the front desk where they separated. He thought he saw a bit of sympathy creep onto the face of the old woman behind the counter as he passed, but he ignored it as just an apparition. True to his word, 4 girls were sitting against the wall outside the Anbu complex. They were just sitting there, watching the people go by. He in turn watched them for a few minutes before Hinata turned her head and noticed him. She disappeared from view only to reappear latched onto him. Naruto-kun. Are you okay? Why did you leave without saying anything? She cried into his chest as she hit him, making them both spin around a little. I told Kin I was leaving. Yeah, but you know how she is in the morning. She didn't realize what you were talking about. I just wanted to be by myself for a bit. I'm sorry, but it was just something I needed to do alone. Understand? He wanted them to know why he did what he did, but he wasn't really even sure why he did it himself. So it's done then? Haku asked as she came up and gently hugged onto him as well, nuzzling into his neck a bit. Yeah. It's done. Good. She deserved it for what she did. Kin, please. Sorry. It makes me mad. Still. I know. I'm still not sure that it's real, but. Let's get out of here. I need to get some food. Ichirakus sound good to you ladies? I'm buying. The girls looked between each other and nodded. His smile was disturbing them, but if a meal would make him feel better, then they would agree to anything. As they walked away, the group was so ignorant of their surroundings that they completely missed the 4 shapes speeding the opposite way. Perhaps if even one of them wasn't so concerned for the blonde, they could have changed the coming events, but by the time it all comes to pass, they may find that they wouldn't have wanted to even if they were observant. Tsunade sighed as she signed off another application for vacation. She was making progress in the stacks, but it was slow. For every 3 papers she completed, another 2 seemed to replace them. She absently wondered if this was some scheme set up by the old man to punish her for being away for so long. She took a small break every few hours to enjoy some sake, but other than that she stuck to her pace. If anything, the constant work kept her mind off of where she was. The seat that both her fiancé and brother had desired to occupy. She was about to take her first sip of sake on her first break of the day when a loud explosion shook the tower. She jumped out of her hair and rushed to the rattling window. Report. Hokage-sama. It seems to have originated from the prison cells. We are currently looking into the cause. Find out and let me know as soon as anything is found. Hi. Not waiting for another person to show up, she made her way to the roof to assess the situation. She could see various ninja rushing about to get to their stations. Lock down the village. I don't want anyone leaving until we've found out what happened. Behind her, an Anbu in hiding bounded off to relay the orders just as another appeared on the roof. Hokage-sama. It appears that one of the prisoners has escaped with outside help. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. Who? Uchiha Sasuke. Che. Another ninja, this time a Jonin, appeared beside the Anbu. Hokage-sama. We found a returning patrol assaulted half a mile from the gates and a set of wall guards were killed, recently. The Sannin growled. So they may have gotten away. I want squads organized and sent in every direction. We have no idea who they are or where they went. I want any Inuzuka available to get the Uchihas sent and split up with different squads before they leave. Go. Both of the ninja disappeared and shot across the roofs before splitting up to get their divided tasks done. Efficiency at its finest. Damn it. This just has to happen now. That brat's going to roast when they bring him back. Bloodline or not, he's a liability. Danzo-sama. Uchiha Sasuke has escaped from the village. It is unknown where he is headed, but the Hokage has mobilized a mass force after him. Danzo gripped his pen a little tighter before loosening his grasp. No matter. Now that we have Tsunade here, she'll no doubt go about passing his genes on quickly. She's too soft to do otherwise, and if they manage to catch him, it will be all the better. Sir, whoever helped him escape managed to do it just as the squad assigned to get the first samples was headed to his room. They never completed their task. This time the pen snapped in two. Follow the ninja as best as you can. Do anything possible to make sure the Uchiha is brought back in working order. I want that Sharingan under control. As his fist hit the desk, the root ninja disappeared. You Uchiha are far too much trouble. Once I get a few bread, I will kill the last of you myself. Then the next generation will be completely loyal instead of the traitorous line that seems to run rampant currently. Chapter 30. The hunt is on. Those that could make it were now assembled in front of the tower. She had a feeling that most came more because of the fact that it was the Uchiha than the fact that he was an escaped prisoner. Even Sashi was busy, along with some others, dividing those gathered into groups for retrieval. The only problem was that they were quickly running out of long-distance track the walls. Either whoever got him managed to teleport away or they put him in something. Following their scents was no good either. It seemed that whoever came for him planned far ahead, as their scent was all over the place, covering a large area around the village. In short, they could have gone in any direction. Their only hope was to go outward until the scent disappeared, then follow the border of the scent until they crossed its path again. Even if they crossed the trail and managed to pick up the scent, it would be a matter of how far they may have gotten, and if the squad would be able to catch them before they crossed a border. If they hit a border, it would soon become an international issue unless they went through legal methods to get permission to cross over. The whole thing was giving her a headache, not to mention all the paperwork it was causing. She could see the face of the old man laughing at her inside her head. She sent another of the ever-growing squads off to the west with a dismissive wave of her hand. As she looked towards the next group coming towards her, she grimaced. Sending a bunch of rookies after ninja that were able to take out Jonin and Chunin. This just gets better and better. Safety in numbers, I guess. She waved them over and the group behind them, catching a few people off guard. All right, brats. Uchiha Sasuke was broken out and we're going to find him and bring him back. Now I'm putting you all together since we don't know how many of what rank ninja are with him. You get Kiba as your tracker since you should be at least a little familiar with him. Any preference in direction? She looked down at the map and waited for someone to speak up. Quote. I say north. Shikamaru announced as he looked at the current troop movements. Any particular reason? Tsunade knew that Inara wouldn't make such a decision lightly. I agree with him, Naruto said from the side with Haku nodding beside him. I'm still waiting for a reason. Sasuke was marked by Orochimaru, who is the Otokage. It would stand to reason that he would be the most likely to try to capture the Uchiha. As such, they would be heading towards Oto. Shit. Tsunade looked up from her map just in time to see the last of her Jonin disappearing over the rooftops. All that was left were assorted Chunin and Genin. Double shit. Okay, I guess you're all that's left. A bunch of clan brats and a wise ass with a former Oto Kunoichi can't be all that bad, I suppose. She stared between them and the map for a moment, biting her nails in frustration. For all she knew, they could be up against Elite Jonin. All right, fine. Who's going to take lead? The three Chunin looked at each other. Shikamaru, Naruto and Haku announced, to which the Nara muttered, troublesome. All right, Nara, you're in charge. Do as you see fit. You have 30 minutes to prepare, then you head north. Meet your team outside the gates, and if someone doesn't show up, leave them behind. Time is of the essence here. A chorus of, "Hi," came just before the group of ninja shot off to gear up. With only a half hour they had to rush. The team met outside the gate, rushing off into the trees almost as soon as their feet hit the ground. Kiba and Naruto took the lead with Shikamaru and Tenten behind them. Neji and Hinata brought up the rear while Choji was partnered with Haku on the left and Ino finished the diamond formation with Kin on the right. This allowed some offense and defense in each section as they crashed through the treetops. They were all armed for full battle, or as close as they could get with their time limit. The effects of which could be seen on some of them. Hinata had her supply pouch but not her shuriken holster. Even Neji seemed to be missing his shinobi sandals, instead relying on his foot wrappings for protection. Kiba didn't really rely on too much other than Akamaru, so he was the first to be completely ready, followed by Kin and Haku, who were used to carrying their gear on them. Naruto was already prepared for a fight, but just to be safe he went home to stock up a bit more. He managed to get most of his regalia from the Chunin exams together minus a few scrolls of seals. He wouldn't have time to set up those traps anyway when the enemy would be in front of them and trying to run away. He did get his mother's sword strapped on, but had to just grab Kafu's and do his best to don it as he ran. With such a large force going along, noise was going to be the least of their worries. As they made their way through the treetops, Naruto couldn't help but wonder what those around him may be thinking about him now. There were some he didn't have to worry about, like Hinata, Kin and Haku, but the others that were there for his announcement still hadn't said anything about it, even if a couple of them made some appearances after that meeting. He could see them glancing at him every once in a while and it made him slightly nervous. For all his calmness and self-assurance, he still couldn't help but feel the need for some acceptance for who he is. Looking to his immediate left, he passed his gaze over Kiba, since the Inuzuka hadn't been there for that part of the meeting, and looked over to Choji first to see the boy looking back at him. He gave the Akamichi a small smile. Choji's flashback. After the meeting at Naruto's, Choji had quite a bit on his mind. Because of hanging with Shikamaru, he had already gone in knowing what he might hear, but actually hearing about the Kyuubi being inside one of his friends from the blonde's own mouth still left him feeling a bit awkward. The announcement may have been short and to the point, but the fact that he didn't want to talk about his treatment spoke volumes more than he knew. None of the teens were blind as children. Sure, they may have been spared some of the things done to Naruto, but they had still seen the glares, heard the whispers, and got rushed away when a mob had a hold of him. It didn't take a genius like Shikamaru to figure out why he wasn't in school the next day in the latter events. Now he sat at the dinner table, twirling some food around on his plate as he went over the information he hadn't known about. For all the brains in Shikamaru's head, and all the things he had been through as a ninja, nothing could have prepared him for that revelation. Choji, what's wrong, son? Choji looked up at his mother and sighed. Anytime he wasn't scarfing down food, she'd always assume there was something wrong. Of course, it didn't really help that in every case she had been right. He looked to his father to see a concerned expression on his face as well. You remember back when I was little? I mean, even before the academy. He watched them both nod slowly, not quite sure where he was headed. I remember there was one time that we were at the market and we saw a kid my age digging in a dumpster in an alley. You both were quick to rush me away. Why? He saw them shift uncomfortably as they looked at each other. Choji, honey, there are some people in this world that just can't be helped. If we went around and helped all the poor people in Konoha, we would become poor ourselves. His mother tried to reason. Are you sure there wasn't another reason? He had a slightly darker undertone this time, which wasn't missed by his parents. What do you mean, son? Choza looked a bit wary of where the topic was going, but didn't flinch once on the outside. I mean, was it because of the money, or because of what's in him? His father was immediately angry and he had to admit it was slightly terrifying. Where did you hear about that? Who told you? Tell me now, Choji. His mother was near hysterics as well, but seemed unable to form a complete sentence. Naruto. One name made the whole room silent. After a few minutes Choza sighed. Do you hate him for it? No. The man nodded his head. Do you hate him for it? No, son. We don't hate him. We were wary of him at the start, but we didn't hate him. Once we saw that he wasn't anything close to deadly, we accepted him as a fellow citizen. That's why we never told you not to go near him once you were in the academy. By that time though, Sandaime-sama already gave him an apartment and stipend, so there wasn't really a need for us to help him further. I see. When Shikamaru and I first worked it out I was a little skeptical, but when Naruto admitted it, I was proud of him. Is that wrong? No. I am proud of him too. He's carried a burden I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy and he's endured so much. I can't help but see him as one of our great protectors. Choza admitted as he thought of an older blonde he'd once known. So much like you were. Asterisk 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 Choji's flashback and asterisk asterisk. Choji gave him a broad smile in return, letting Naruto know that he was still with him. Naruto turned to the other side and locked eyes with Ino. Ino. The only one that hadn't been waiting for him after the execution. He didn't really blame her though. She had at one point been Sakura's best friend and had no doubt had some fond memories of Isako. When she dropped her head, he had his answer. Asterisk 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 Ino's flashback asterisk asterisk. Ino couldn't believe what she just heard. Naruto was the Kyuubi. No. Naruto held the Kyuubi. Was this why everyone called him a monster? She felt sick. She couldn't even respond when she heard the other girls saying something in the background. When Naruto started to speak again though, she tore herself to the gut as he told them of his encounter with Isako and again when he said he would be the one to ultimately kill her. Sure, he had a valid reason for it, but even so. She knew Isako. They had eaten dinner together. She took Sakura and her shopping, did their hair, gave her presents for her birthday. She was torn now. She couldn't think the entire way home, opting to go straight to bed without so much as a shower to keep her from her mattress. It didn't help though. As soon as her head hit her pillow, the entire conversation came back to her. Instead of sleeping, she ended up spending the entire night going over this new information and her own memories of everything. From how she acted towards Naruto to hanging out at the Haruno household. When memories of Isako came up, they started to contaminate themselves. All she could see was a young Naruto in the background screaming in fear and pain. On the other hand, when memories of Naruto came up, she couldn't help but see an overlay of the pictures of Kyuubi she had seen in their textbooks at school. It was both frightening and frustrating as she rolled around in an effort to get comfortable enough to just fall asleep. When the sunlight came through the window, she just stared at the ceiling until her father made her get up around noon. She ate in a daze and went about her business. Inoichi looked at her with concern, but she shrugged it off as having a lot on her mind. Definitely true. Of course, he just took it as the troubles of a teenager, though he seemed to take a little pushing in order to drop that discussion. After that, she had left the house, not wanting to risk letting anything slip or having her dad try to pry out her troubles. She needed time to think. By the time she stopped thinking, the execution was already over. She hadn't even tried to get in touch with anyone. She hadn't even gone to see how Naruto was doing. Everything just seemed so unreal lately. She found herself wishing that life would go back to the way it was before the Chunin exams, back when Sasuke was still the mysterious dreamboat and Naruto was the class clown. Then she got the notice that everyone was getting called in for an emergency. Asterisk 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 and Ino's flashback asterisk asterisk. Ino hung her head, unable to meet his gaze. She felt like almost as much a monster as the rest of the village for not being about to accept that his actions were justified no matter how she saw Isako. Naruto wasn't sure how to take that. It hurt a little, but maybe she just needed some time to sort things out. Even if she didn't come back to him, he wouldn't blame her. She had more than enough reasons not to. Shaking off those thoughts, he considered those behind him. Shikamaru had no doubt already went through the situation logically and analyzed everything to the finest detail. Since Choji would have been with him through the whole thing, it wouldn't surprise him that the Nara would still be with him. Neji, after hearing about the Kyuubi, had most likely went over their Chunin finals fight again and brooded over his loss. There was nothing he could do about it though. Technically the Kyuubi was now his weapon, so he could use it any way he saw fit. It was now a tool, just like his jutsu or a bloodline that was unique to him. Whether he accepted that fact or not had yet to be seen. Kiba was the one he worried about the most. The boy had a big mouth and a bad grudge. He could easily let information slip, accidentally, and keep his prince far away from the evidence. Whatever happened, he just hoped that it wouldn't affect the other four present. Hinata, Haku and Kin had accepted the news wholeheartedly. After everyone else left that day, the four had sat down and had a long talk. They went over Isuko's sin in a little more detail. Naruto wasn't willing to tell them everything he knew, even though they had already heard a lot of it. He really didn't want the pity, not now when it was far too late to stop what happened. The entire thing was done with and there was nothing left to worry about anymore, so why brood about it? His last name was Namikaze, not Uchiha. Even so, he ended up allowing them to sleep in his bed until the execution. He was pleased at that point to see Tenten waiting with the others, ready to comfort him after the ordeal. She told him about how she was glad that such a monstrosity no longer had a place in the world. She let him know that she had told her father about what she knew, labeling the rape as a very serious crime against Naruto-kun, to keep his secret safe for now. His reaction was to tell her that the whore got what she deserved and that if someone had even tried to do such a thing to her, they would have gotten off with a much harsher punishment. She had apologized about talking about it, but she had to get it off her chest. He was just happy that she was there, so he didn't care, though he may have if she had spilled too much. The last thing he needed was rumors spreading like wildfire. They would have enough help in that respect due to the elders, no doubt. Four shadows came into view ahead and they increased their speed in order to catch them. Landing in a small clearing, they were only slightly surprised to find a group of four people that they didn't know carrying a large sealed drum. With a rain of shuriken showering down on them, it quickly became obvious that there would be no negotiation. Choji and Kin found themselves tripping up on strings now attached to their ankles and being dragged towards the group of four. Tenten attempted to throw kunai to cut the strings, but to her surprise it was the kunai that got deflected. Undeterred, Hinata and Neji ran towards their downed teammates and snapped the strings with a simple Juken strike. So the little fucktards have some coordination. At least this boring fucking mission from hell might get a little more fun. The red-headed solo girl of the four sneered out. To Yuya, watch your language please. We aren't here to have fun, we are here to complete our mission. Shut up Jirobo, you fat fuck, before I shove my foot so far up your ass you'll be biting my fucking nails. To Yuya replied. Both of you be quiet. Just take care of these kids and let's get going. We don't have time to mess around. Growled out the one with an odd growth on the back of his neck. Shikamaru quirked an eyebrow at the argument. Whenever you're finished, we'd like to get around the point in which we get back our prisoner. If you don't mind, that is. Shut the fuck up you pineapple-headed bitch. We don't have time to play with you fucking kids. To Yuya's right. We need to get back to Odo quick. We can't waste time on some brats. The one with 6 arms admitted. Orochimaru-sama wants the punk back right away. Alright. Jirobo, take care of them. Kitamura, grab the coffin and let's go. I don't think we said you could leave yet. Kiba took a couple of steps forward before jumping back as the ground under his feet started to lift up. Doden Kekai. Doro Domu. Jirobo announced as his hands hit the ground. A large dome of rock rose around the Konoha ninja, blocking their advancement and any escape as it blocked every angle. I'll hold them here, Saken. Get the Uchiha back to Odo. I'll join up after I've had my fill of these kids. You're such a fucking glutton. Let's move. Kitamura hefted the barrel containing Sasuke and leapt after Saken and Yuya as they disappeared into the forest. Jirobo turned his attention back to the dome where his victims were unwillingly giving him their chakra through the Chakura Kyuin jutsu he was using through the barrier. He flinched slightly as he heard a crack on its surface, but easily reinforced it. Inside, the pursuit group was contemplating what to do. Kiba had just tried to strike the walls with a Suga, causing a small dent that quickly reformed. Well, physical damage seems to do little. Naruto remarked from behind. Shut up. If you can do better, then be my guest. Hinata, Neji, can either of you see outside? Shikamaru asked as two sets of Byakugan activated. Neji was the first to answer. The walls are laced with chakra. It's very difficult to see anything past the barrier. His eyes narrowed a bit at the wall before widening in shock. It seems we have another problem to worry about. The dome is also sucking away our chakra. So if we don't find a way out of here quick, we won't even be able to move, let alone fight them. That's not quite everything. The chakra seems thicker over this way than on the other side of the dome. Hinata's soft voice echoed in the small space. If that's the case, we should concentrate our attacks on the area with the least amount of chakra. If we do that, we may be able to break through. Haku's right. Kiba tried to keep up Suga on that wall. Neji and Hinata, when Kiba has to stop, try using your eyes to see where the weak points are. With any luck we won't have to waste too much chakra getting out of here. Shikamaru instructed. Right. The three chorused as Kiba and Akamaru got themselves ready. Shikyaku no Jutsu. Jujin Bunshin. Gatsuga. The group huddled in the center of the dome while Kiba and Akamaru pounded at the walls. Large divots appeared on the inside of the dome as dust and rock shards were thrown into the air. When the noise and dust died down enough for the group to unshield their eyes, they found Kiba on his knees in exhaustion with Akamaru laying down and panting in front of him. Neji and Hinata quickly activated their bloodline and took in the damage. Craters and pockmarks littered the area around them, but they soon began to close off just like the first one Kiba created. Despite that, they were able to easily spot the flow of chakra through the dome, and in complete sync they each threw a kunai at one mark in particular. Hinata and Neji turned towards each other and gave a small smirk. Alright, we have our mark. Kiba, rest up. Shikamaru turned towards the wall opposite the kunai and yelled to the outside. Just to let you know, you've stolen something that belongs to Konoha and we plan on taking it back. Release us now and you'll gain yourself a lighter punishment. The muffled voice of Jirobo came back through the dome. Talk all you want, brat. You guys are my meal today and there is no way I'm letting you go. You can just sit in there and be swallowed up like everyone else. Suit yourself. The Chunin turned back towards his best friend. Choji, do it. Everyone looked at the plump boy and backed up to give him room. You each owe me a bag of chips for this. Baika no Jutsu. Nikuden Sensha. As the giant ball-shaped Choji sped towards the wall, everyone else braced themselves. The ground and dome shook around them when Choji hit and started to drill through the wall. Outside, Jirobo's eyes widened and he pushed more chakra into the technique. It didn't help though. Within seconds the opposite side of the dome exploded in a shower of rocks and dust as Choji blasted into the open with the rest of the team right behind. They all watched as the dome crumbled in on itself to reveal an amused Jirobo. Hey, you escaped. I guess that makes you at least partially entertaining. Not that it's going to matter in the end. All you Konoha ninja are just far too pampered to be of any challenge to the Otogakur no Shinobi Yananshu. You really stand no chance, so just lay down and die already. You catch us off guard once and think that you're invincible. Underestimating us will be your downfall. Kiba rushed the Oto ninja head on despite the yells for him to stop. Like a little punk like you is a challenge. Taken. Jirobo launched his shoulder into Kiba's chest, causing the boy to fly backwards and land hard on his side. Shoshitsu. He turned to the side and thrust his knee up, catching a clone of Naruto in the ribs, smashing it out of existence. A nice try with the sneak attack, but like I said, you punks are no challenge. Doden Kekai. Doro Domu. The ground around the group started to shift again, but Choji jumped in front of them. Baika no Jutsu. Nikuden Sensha. Choji's jutsu destroyed the barrier before it even had a chance to build up, making Jirobo grumble a little. Now you're just getting annoying. The Oto nin dug his hands into the dirt and started to lift, shocking the others as he held up a huge slab of earth. Doden. Dorio Dango. Thrusting his arms forward, The huge missile flew at his opponents, who were forced to jump out of the way or risk being flattened under the weight of the slab. He. Run away, little mice. Wouldn't want the big bad lion to squash you in his paws now, would you? They landed just behind where the boulder rested and glared at the gloating shinobi. Even if some were a little frightened by the sheer power it would take to lift such a thing, they weren't about to run like cowards. At the same time, they still had a mission to complete, and being stalled from a fight wasn't going to help matters. Shikamaru, being the leader, made the final decision. We're going to have to split up. Chances are that they are going to try to slow us down like this one by one until they can make it to the border. There are 4 of them total plus Sasuke, so we'll split into teams of 2. Hopefully that'll be enough to at least keep them occupied. Choji stepped forward. This guy seems to be all strength, so I'm probably the best match for him. If nothing else, I can buy enough time to get you all past. Don't you mean you're going to help him fight? Growled Ino, a little upset that the other girls seemed to not want to lift a finger. Why? Think he'll need help? I bet he doesn't even use half his strength on that loser. Haku smirked at the blonde and got one in return. It was obviously a lie, but it would probably get under their opponent's skin. Fine. Choji and Haku, we're counting on you to watch our backs. Make sure you catch up later. Naruto gave a swift, acknowledging nod to the 2 of them before turning towards Jirobo, who seemed less than thrilled. You think I'm going to let you just waltz on by? The hefty man crouched a bit before running straight at them, preparing for a full hand-to-hand brawl. Standing in front of the group, Choji took out a small case and flipped open the first compartment. Food pills. No, they're different. But what then? Jirobo watched with little interest as the pill was swallowed. As he closed in on the group, he pulled his arm back and got ready to deliver the first of many blows, only to find his charge stopped as his frame was held in the iron grip of Choji. What? He's mine. Get out of here, now. As though his voice were signaling the start of a race, the rest of the Konoha ninja sped off into the forest. Hey, sacrificing yourself for your friends. How noble. I'm completing my mission, which is more than I can say for you. Choji pushed the larger man back a few feet before his feet dug in and he stopped himself. This may actually be a little fun. Jirobo chuckled. For once I'm glad Tsunade underestimated us. 2-on-1 odds will make this a little easier at least. These guys may be strong, but it's not like they have superpowers, right? Naruto called back towards Shikamaru. They did get into Konoha and out again without too much of a fuss, and they broke Sasuke out in the process. I wouldn't count them out as pushovers just yet. Come his reply. Naruto narrowed his eyes before looking forward again. That may be, but those 2, they aren't pushovers either. He missed the smirk that he got in return. I'll give the 2 of you credit for being brave enough to stand up to me, but courage and stupidity tend to go hand in hand often. You're one to talk, big man. You just got stopped dead in your tracks by the same genin that blew through your little jutsu, twice. Haku smirked as the orange mohawked shinobi growled. And now he has me for backup, so maybe you should just make it easy on yourself and just lay down and die. And what are you gonna do, girly? You're just here to try to heal him after I pummel him into the ground. Why don't you just abandon this pig now and save your own hide? Maybe I'll be nice and not hunt you down. Not likely though. I'm really hungry right now. Choji was tired of exchanging words and the pill he took wouldn't last forever. With a grunt he picked Jirobo off the ground and tossed him into a tree as though he was just a sack of potatoes. Would you just shut up? He stood there panting, looking at his downed opponent while Haku stood at the side in a bit of awe of what he just did. Meanwhile, Jirobo was crumpled upside down on the ground trying to figure out what just happened. I can't believe he actually threw me even when I was sticking to the ground with chakra. Orochimaru-sama warned us about Clan Ninja, but what the hell is up with this kid? Picking himself off the ground, he glared at the Akamichi in front of him. You got in a lucky hit, kid, but luck only lasts for so long. I'll just finish this now then. Pulling a couple pieces of ninja wire out from his supplies, his audience's questions were soon answered as the sound of clinking metal showed to be a large number of kunai attached to the wire. Wrapping the arrangement of weapons around himself, Choji gave a menacing grin. Baika no Jutsu. Nikuden Hari Sensha. The boy acted as spikes to give the ball more traction as well as a deadlier payload. Jirobo, seeing the lethality of the spinning ball of death, jumped out of the way of Choji's first charge, causing it to run into the tree he had previously crashed into. The effects were immediate as the ball ground straight through the wood, causing the tree to topple over. His relief at not becoming human sawdust was short-lived as the ball spun back towards him. Having more time on account of the distance he jumped though, he decided to wear the jutsu out. Doden. Doroku Geishi. Slamming his hands into the ground in front of him, a large section lifted up and stood as a stone wall directly in front of him, blocking Choji as he ran straight into it. Jirobo's victory was short-lived though, as the spiked ball dug right through the earth wall as easily as it had done to the tree. The Oto Nin was forced to quickly block the attack with his bare hands while his feet dug into the ground. It was his luck that the kunai were spaced far enough that he was able to find a place for his hands that was clear enough that they wouldn't get sawed off immediately. With chakra-reinforced muscles he managed to stop the attack, though barely. Blood dripped to the ground from a few cuts that managed to slash his body, but he was alive. Che. Kid thinks too highly of himself. Time to knock him down a few pegs. In another stroke of luck, Choji seemed willing to wait to see if his attack was successful, giving Jirobo all the time he needed to finish activating his own gift from Orochimaru. I can't believe I'm activating my seal for this punk. Like it or not, small triangles began to appear across his skin in a vine-like pattern as he looked up and grinned evilly at Choji. You fool. The Oto Nin took a step back before thrusting his palm forward. Asshole. The attack sent Choji flying through the air and out of his expanded form. Konayuki. Both males turned towards the feminine voice to see a pile of white on the ground, right where Choji was about to land. With a small piff, Choji found himself in one of the coldest environments he could remember outside of his family's freezer. Aya. That's freezing. Nearly as quickly as he had landed, he was out of the pile and shaking the snow out of his clothes. Unfortunately, some of the powder had gotten inside and was making him dance around as it melted into more uncomfortable places. You could thank me for saving you, you know. Haku mentioned passively. Remind me to do that when I don't have ice-cold water running down my back. Hey, thought you were gonna stay out of this unless he needed healed girly. Jirobo taunted from his position, slightly irked that there was little damage done. The easiest way to heal someone is to make sure they don't get injured in the first place. Besides, looks like you're getting outside help as well. She half-heartedly waved at his black markings, making him snort. A gift from Orochimaru-sama. Call it a tool, much like a kunai. Ha. Naruto-kun had time to research one of those seals. You're not fooling anyone. He may not have figured it out completely, but we get the gist of how it works. You're the one that's the tool here. She watched the man stiffen as he glared hard at her. You seem to like to talk a lot, girly, but I wonder why it is that your friends so willingly left you behind. In a cell that big, the only reason could be that the two of you are the weakest of the bunch, left to play with me while the rest do the actual mission. It'll be no skin off their backs if I just kill you now. Haku looked at Choji to see high head slightly dip down. Think what you want, but we know that our friends let us fight you because they believe in us and know that we can beat you. Besides, from your own logic, wouldn't that mean that you are the weakest of your group too? She smirked as he tensed once again. You think I'm weak? I'll show you just who is weak. I'll show you exactly why your pathetic excuse for a leader left you behind to die. Jirobo rushed in and began his attack on Choji as Haku, surprisingly, just watched with narrowed eyes. You see, even the girl thinks you're worthless. Meanwhile, Choji was doing his best to defend against the onslaught while searching his memories. Painful pasts were brought up as he remembered, but one memory filtered through them as the Oto Nin continued to berate his friends. Shikamaru. As another knee landed in his gut and threw him back on the ground, he recalled the memories of Shikamaru, his first true friend. The one who always stuck by his side and gave him the confidence to keep pushing forward no matter what the other kids said. Slowly he got up from the ground, ignoring the smirking Jirobo as he dug in his pouch again. Finding what he wanted, he brought out his pill container and grabbed the yellow pill before popping it in his mouth. Both his opponent and his friend watched in fascination as chakra started to swirl around him. Jirobo smirked. Quite an impressive amount of chakra, but still not the main dish. I'm strong because my friends support me and make me strong. Let's go, fat ass. Shut up. Jirobo charged at the Akamichi, clearly annoyed at the jibe. Buben Baika no Jutsu. Ude. The Oto Nin only had time to widen his eyes before the oversized arm smashed into him, knocking him backwards across the ground. Buben Baika no Jutsu. Hagi. After the arm retracted, Choji smashed his, now enormous, leg down into the ground, but Jirobo managed to jump out of the way in time. Buben Baika no Jutsu. Ude. He was too slow to miss the follow-up arm smash, however, and got slammed back into the ground before he could make his next leap. The area was quiet for a moment, but the lack of action was short-lived as Jirobo forced himself up and grabbed onto Choji's enlarged arm. Don't play around with me, trash. With his own inhuman strength, he lifted the boy off his feet and swung him around before throwing him into the air, a mistake as he would soon discover. Take this. Cho Baika no Jutsu. Jirobo's eyes widened and Haku's mouth dropped open as Choji's entire body multiplied in size until it covered the clearing. Haku was quick to move out of the way, but for the Oto Nin, who was near the center of the clearing, it was far too late for that. As Choji hit, the ground shook and a large shockwave tore through the trees, uprooting some as a dust cloud blew between the rest. Haku had to move between a couple trees due to the ones she was standing on becoming unstable. Choji, you truly are strong. Still in his oversized form, Choji was starting to feel the effects of the yellow pill, but he had other thoughts on his mind. I did it. Is it over now? Both of their musings were cut short, however, as his massive body started to shift and lift off the ground. No way. A deep voice answered from the ground. I never would have thought I would have to go to level 2 against such a guy. Shogekisho. With an upward pal thrust from Jirobo, Choji was sent into the sky once again, despite his increased size. The shock from the hit caused his jutsu to end before he hit the ground full force. His pain was immense, but it was matched by his shock when he saw his opponent. Jirobo had activated his level 2 cursed seal and now stood as an abomination of humanity. With his red skin, warts and long mane of orange hair, he looked more akin to an Oni. You're finished now, kid. There is no one that can match me now that I'm 10 times stronger than normal. He made his way over to the Akamichi's prone form, in absolutely no rush to keep him from getting up. It wouldn't have mattered though, since Choji was in far too much pain from the yellow pill to try moving too much. The most he managed was to shift partially onto his side to look at his opponent better. For weaklings like you, playing ninja would be far safer. Reaching his destination, the Oto Nin kicked Choji in the side before punching him away. Again he walked up to his fallen opponent, not satisfied with him simply not being able to move. Grabbing the boy around the neck, he pushed him further into the dirt as his hand began to glow. Maintaining this form requires a lot of chakra. I'll feed off of all of your remaining chakra to keep it active. He didn't get to finish his statement as a multitude of Senbon sped for his side. Haku cursed as her target jumped out of the way, but even if she missed, at least her comrade was safe. Keep your hands off him, fatso. Oh, so the little girlie decided to play too. Well, even though you had said you were going to stay out of this, I don't mind if you add yourself to my meal. The demonic man licked his lips in anticipation of eating her chakra as well. As if I would let you get close enough. You may be stronger than me, but I'm faster. And you think your little pins are going to stop me? Such things will just bounce off my skin. Well, I'll just have to use something a little stronger then, won't I? Reaching into her pouch, Haku brought out 2 scrolls and placed them on the ground before going through a familiar set of hand seals. Well, familiar to Choji at least. I am water user by blood, and we have many techniques that can probably give even your tough skin a run for its money. Water, huh? Well, if you haven't noticed, there isn't a whole lot of water around this area. I'm afraid you're all out of luck. Jirobo's smirk faded at the calm look in Haku's eyes. With the help of a friend's jutsu, I found a way to tip the scales. Shobakakorasui. In a puff of smoke, both scrolls flew up into the air, followed shortly by a spinning Haku. Smaller puffs of smoke came forth as she unsealed a massive amount of objects from the scrolls and rained them down on the battlefield below. Jirobo was having a hard time dodging them all and couldn't find the time to take his eyes off the sky in order to see what they were, but from the sound they made as they hit the dirt he could guess. As the assault stopped, Haku landed gracefully on the ground once more, casually tossing the last of her arsenal in the air and catching it again. With a flick of her wrist, the object flew towards her target, who in turn caught it with little trouble. So you found a way to seal up water in a scroll by using water balloons. A child's toy turned into a weapon for battle. Not bad, girly, but you'll have to do better than that if you want to beat me. Tightening his grip on the balloon, he let it pop in his hand, but he wasn't ready for the near-freezing water that splashed down his arm. Water comes in many forms, you know. The liquid form is what most people think of, but there is also the vapor form and the solid form. My earlier jutsu should have given you a clue as to which one I deal in. Hyoten. Jirobo narrowed his eyes at Haku. I underestimated her and now I'm in her domain. This is bad. Hyoten. Sabama Fubuki. Forming out of the water, dozens of ice birds flew towards the Oto Nin. Doden. Doroku Geishi. Unlike with Choji's jutsu, the small ice birds were agile and swift. Controlled by their creator's chakra, they easily weaved around the stone barrier to both sides before dive bombing their target. A large amount of dust flew up from behind the wall as Haku waited patiently. A hand clutched the side as a dark-skinned body came into view. Jiro aren't enough to take me down, but now that you've soaked the ground I can make some of my jutsu a little easier. Doden. Doryuden. A dragon head rose from the ground, firing multiple projectiles at Haku. Makio Hakuhio. Haku vanished from her spot only to appear near Choji through a newly formed mirror. I already told you you wouldn't be able to match my speed. She went to take a step forward, but found herself caught on something. Looking down, she saw Choji hanging onto her leg. Let him go. I'll take care of him. Struggling, the Akamichi managed to stand one more time. Haku was about to protest, but she noticed the determination in his eyes. He didn't know his backstory, but from his reactions to the way the Oto Nin had insulted him, she could tell that he needed this for himself. Nodding, she stepped aside. Thanks. Choji dug out his pills one last time and pulled out the red pill just as Jirobo came rushing at them. Like, I'll let you try out another one of those things. Desperate, Jirobo ran at the boy in order to stop him before he became a danger again. Tim seemed to slow down as he got closer, trying to catch up to the pill's momentum towards its destination. He cocked his fist back and swung it forward, praying it wasn't as bad as his mind made seem to believe. Fate, it seemed, was against him. Just as the fist came into his view, the pill hit his tongue and was swallowed. With only a couple of inches until impact, his body became light and disappeared from everyone's view. The only thing his opponent managed to his was a cloud of blue butterflies that were left in his wake. Following the trail of glowing insects, the two witnesses found themselves looking at a unique sight. The butterflies, on reaching Choji, seemed to dissolve and form two huge wings of chakra on his back. Not only that, but the boy looked thin. Shit, he managed to eat it. No, I am still stronger, I just have to hit him. He clenched his fist. Gangeki. Rounding on the genin, Jirobo made to smash him into the dirt, but to both his and Haku's amazement, his fist was caught in one hand by the boy, who hadn't even taken the time to look at his assailant. It's useless now that I'm 100 times stronger. Finally facing the man, he slammed his elbow into his gut and sent him sprawling, leaving a shallow trench in the ground. That was for calling me weak. Similar to what was done to him, Choji simply walked over to the older man before punching him in the face as he tried to stand, sending him tumbling again. That was for insulting Konoha with your unforgivable presence. Once again walking over, he pinned the partially struggling Jirobo to the ground with his foot as he started to gather his remaining chakra into his arm. More than anything though, you insulted and belittled my best friend. For that, all my chakra in my left hand. This punch is heavier than life. Haku couldn't stand idle anymore. She saw how much chakra Choji was pouring into his fist in his rage. Choji, stop it or you'll be too exhausted from chakra depletion to continue. His sad smile was all the recognition she got before his fist shot towards Jirobo's heart. Wait. Listen to her. Jirobo's final attempt to live was silenced as the chakra-enhanced punch crashed into him, collapsing his own strengthened bones into the vulnerable organs that they were meant to protect. His head rolled back in a silent scream as a large crater formed around them. Seconds later, the effects of the cursed seal receded, showing the death mask of the Odo team's strong juggernaut. Choji's victory was short to her teammate. The man's entire chest cavity was crushed in, he was dead almost as soon as the attack landed. Her more immediate concern was now Choji. As she approached, she could see that he wasn't doing well. Kneeling beside him, she shouted at him to stay with her as she started up the basic diagnostics jutsu she knew. This was what Hinata and she had been practicing for, but it was so much different to actually be in the position to be needed than she thought it would be. Back when she was with Zabuza, she had always been in control and his injuries were always minor. She had never really been in a high-stress, critical situation. Now she was beside someone that was possibly relying on her to live. She shook her head to clear her thoughts and concentrated on what she was doing. She could already tell the main problem without even having to do the scan. Severe chakra exhaustion to dangerous levels. She didn't know what those pills were, but they had clearly taken their toll on the boy. For now, his broken bones could wait. The internal bleeding came first, then the chakra. As she worked on what she could, she did her best to keep him conscious. You were amazing, Choji. You beat his just like I said you would. Your parents would be proud, so you have to live so they can show you just how proud they are. Despite her words, she could tell that his system wasn't doing well. Her diagnosis was only solidified when he suddenly gripped his chest in pain before falling limply to the ground. Haku pushed into overdrive, feeling slightly guilty for his current condition because of the fact that she could have helped him instead of honoring his wishes. If she had, he may not have been such a mess now. Pushing her chakra harder, she now had a new emergency to handle. His heart was failing due to his lack of chakra. If I stabilize his chakra, his heart could completely fail, but if I try to stabilize his heart first, his chakra levels would still be too low and it would just fail again. Narrowing her eyes in concentration, she slowly split her hands apart. One hand went towards his heart while the other headed towards his head. It was a difficult maneuver for someone her age, and the sweat on her brow proved that, but splitting her concentration between keeping his heart stable and pushing chakra into his system was the best she could think of at the moment. There were numerous times when she felt her control slipping and doubled her concentration in order to not falter. This was nothing like what the scrolls had described it to be, yet at the same time it was just as difficult as she expected. The clearing was silent for almost the entire procedure. Not even the animals seemed to want to make a sound, afraid that it would break her concentration. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Choji's breathing evened out a little and his heartbeat became slightly steadier. Haku gave a sigh of relief as she let her jutsu slowly end, keeping an eye on his vitals to make sure he was indeed stable. He was far from perfect, but he was alive. Reaching into her own pouch, she grabbed a soldier pill and crushed it, pouring the powder into a collapsible cup before filling it with some of the remaining water on the field before forcing the liquid down the boy's throat. Choji choked a little when some of the liquid was inhaled, bringing him back to consciousness. He glanced up at Haku with a confused look on his face. I'm supposed to be dead. Why can I still see? He could feel his chakra slowly rebuilding itself, painfully. He winced as his empty network nursed what few drops it could out of the pill as he tried to catch his breath. Haku. I'm alive. Yes, Choji, you are alive and hopefully will stay that way. Rest now. Other teams should be getting here soon enough. Fine. Then you go. Help the others. I think I can manage to sit her and wait without getting into too much trouble. I need to stay and keep you stabilized, so just sit and rest. I'll move on when help arrives. If I'm stabilized now, then I should be okay. That last pill I took, it's meant to be a last resort, like opening up all 8 gates. I shouldn't be alive right now. He bowed his head low as he spoke before shooting it back up in determination. You've saved my life already, but our friends will still need help, especially if they are all as strong as him. I'm afraid that some may be stronger though. Go, I'll be fine. Haku hesitated for a moment before giving a firm nod and rushing off to the north to catch up with their friends. She was a little low on chakra, but she could still be backup for someone. Back with Choji, the boy was digging through his pouch carefully since every movement seemed like torture. Finding the item he wanted, he pointed it towards the sky and pulled the trigger. A bright red light shot out, followed by a streaming red smoke trail. The flare would hopefully bring teams scrambling to his location so he could tell them where to go, if he was still conscious. With his last action finished, he collapsed back into the dirt and closed his eyes. A few minutes rest would do him good. Neji, Hinata. Without any more instruction, the two activated their Byakugan and scanned the surroundings. Still no sign of traps. Neji announced, getting a confirming nod from Hinata. It seems that they are only anticipating the fat one to show up. Shikamaru thought out loud. You better win, Choji. Kiba growled in response. How dare they underestimate us? If that's true, then we have an opportunity here. Let's go. Jirobo is late. Sakin mused. Kidomaru smirked. No, he's already here. Geez. What took so long? Sorry. Those weaklings had more chakra than I thought. You fat ass. Don't slow us down. Hurry up and take the barrel. That's your job. Tayuya scolded Jirobo. Sure. The three remaining members of the Odo team eyed their teammate suspiciously until Kidomaru addressed the situation. You know, Jirobo, you're being awfully obedient today. What? I'm saying that I won't hand over the barrel to you, because you're not really Jirobo. Lifting the barrel, he threw it to Tayuya, who had to shift a little in order to compensate for the weight. I'll handle it this time. Sakin, Tayuya, you guys go on ahead. Before. Shikamaru said as he released his henge. Trying for a kick, it was also blocked by the Odo nin's lower two hands. As he finished chewing, Kidomaru spat out his jutsu, Ninpo, Kumo Shibari. A web blasted from his mouth, sending Shikamaru into a tree and pinning him there. His celebration was short-lived, however, as a shadow appeared above him. Turning, he had just enough time to jump off the branch to escape the group of Narutos that was falling towards him. With a small chuckle, he spat more web into his hands, creating a ball of the sticky substance before grabbing it with all 6 of his hands. Ninpo. Kumo Sokai. This time the web was large enough to encompass all of the Naruto clones and hang them from the branches. Now Kiba. Naruto and Shikamaru watched as Kiba and Akamaru came spinning out of the forest towards the falling ninja, only for him to swing out of the way using some thin threads of webbing that he held in his hands. I won't let you escape. Kiba growled at his missed target. You better watch your footing before you think up phrases like that. Kiba followed the suggestion to see webbing entwined on his feet and wrapped around his ankles. Bastard. You think you can keep us out with just this? Kidomaru only smirked back, enraging the Inuzuka further. His smirk once again died as he felt a presence behind him. He turned to see Neji headed straight at him with a palm thrust, but instead of lifting himself out of the way this time, he simply dropped a couple of his strands and fell below the strike. He was forced to drop a couple more though, as the strike was followed by a small volley of weapons. Undeterred, he once again formed a large net of webbing and caught Neji. He watched the struggling for a moment before making his next move. I'll cocoon you here and keep you out of the way for now. Shooting out strands of webs, he coated Neji in a thick blanket to hold him in place. Tenten, not thinking of the possible abilities of the webbing, leapt down to try to free her teammate. Landing right next to the cocoon, she hacked at it with her kunai, only for them to bounce off. Realizing she couldn't do much against the material, she turned her head back to their opponent. She might be stuck, but she still had her hands. Volleys of shuriken and kunai flew towards the spider-like man as he dodged out of the way. Not one for playing around too much, he ducked behind a branch and made some more webbing before popping back out and shooting it off at the girl. Tenten's weapons bounced harmlessly off the balls as they rush in, connecting to her arms and legs while pushing her back against the webbing and holding her in place. Kidomaru gave another smirk as he surveyed his captives. His eyes swept over Naruto, then went back to him and his clones. Kage Bunshin. Well, isn't that interesting? Chewing again, he brought all 6 hands to his mouth and pulled out a golden substance. Kumo Nenkin. He answered the unasked question. They all watched as the new substance hardened into curved, spiked weapons. The only question on their minds now was where the other members of their team were. Well now, let's play a little game. It's called, which one is real? Let's try. The one on the end. Kidomaru threw one of his projectiles into the back of a Naruto, only to have it go up in smoke. A clone. Ha. Then let's try this one next. Another throw and another puff of smoke. What a lucky guy. Let's do two at once. Now it's 50-50. One of the weapons landed in its target's side while the other hit its stomach. They both went up in smoke as well. Kidomaru let out an insane laughter as he saw the clouds disappear. You have really good luck, but this time it's one of the two. The next target got a spine in the back before it dispersed as well. Seeing only one left made the Otonin a bit annoyed. So he lasted to the very end. He narrowed his eyes at his last target. Well, it was an interesting game, but now it ends. Die. The last weapon shot out and impaled Naruto in the side, only for him to go up in smoke. What? He quickly turned to see another Naruto along with Ino and Kin descending on him. It was one of the times that he was thankful for having multiple limbs, as he easily rerouted all three of them to a nearby branch while attaching a small strand of web to each of them. You're smarter than I gave you credit for, using your clones so you could get behind me. Good try, but you're out of tricks now. Die. With a rough pull, all three Konoha ninja were forced backwards as the strands forced their actions, but just as they began to fall off the branch they landed on, their rescuers came in the forms of Neji and Hinata. Both Hyuga cut through the webbing with ease before turning to help their comrades. Neji grabbed Ino while Hinata grabbed Kin, leaving Naruto to quickly use some ninja wire and a kunai as a makeshift grappling hook and swing himself back to safety. Good job. With that extra time we were able to figure it out. Neji announced. How did you? Kidomaru scowled at the ninja in front of him. How did he cut my webs? He was in a cocoon. Since it uses chakra as a component, I destroyed it by pouring my chakra into it. Your jutsu is useless against my Juken. Neji informed them all. Though I wouldn't have been able to get everyone out if Hinata hadn't already been working on them. Though she could have helped me out first to get it done faster. He shifted his eyes to his opponent. It looks like I'm the only one who can deal with his jutsu. Everyone, go. He expected them all to see the truth in his words, but there was one person who made their opposition apparent. No, I'm staying too. Neji stood shocked, as did a few others in their group. Hinata, I thank you for your offer, but I will handle this alone. I don't take orders from you, Neji-Nisan. Besides, I can nullify his attacks just as well as you can. Neji narrowed his eyes at her open display of disobedience. Fine. Shikamaru. Tell her to leave with you now. We don't have time for this. Neji turned back towards Kidomaru and got ready to fight. Meanwhile, Hinata turned to their team leader and scowled, daring him to make her go. Hinata was definitely growing mentally, and if nothing else proved it, this did. Troublesome. Let's go, everyone. Neji, Hinata, we'll leave this guy to you. The only indication that Neji heard the Chunin speak was the shifting of his stance and the tightening of his fists as Hinata landed beside him. As the others sped off through the canopy, Neji addressed his cousin. You've grown headstrong. I just hope you can keep up. Try not to get in my way, Hinata. Beside him, Hinata smirked. Don't worry, Neji-Nisan, I won't get in the way. By the time this fight is over, you'll be thanking me for staying. Surprising him yet again, Hinata pushed off their perch and headed the assault. That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it, then like, share and subscribe for the next video, as it's going to be more interesting, and also check out my other playlists. Hope you would like them too.